evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Kalamazoo City Commission to order for Monday, November 5th, 2018. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Cooney.
Present.
Commissioner Cunningham. Commissioner Sykes.
Here.
Commissioner Urban.
Here.
Vice Mayor Knott. Mayor Hopewell.
Present. May we have a motion to excuse Vice Mayor Knott and Commissioner Cunningham?
So move.
Moved by Commissioner Anderson.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Sykes. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. For our opening ceremony this evening, we will have an invocation by Brett Laird, Senior Pastor of Calvary Bible Church. I ask that you stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good evening, Pastor.
Let's pray. Lord, we come before you this evening, and first we want to pause to give you, our Creator, praise for all your goodness. Lord, through the beauty of creation which you've surrounded us with here in the great state of Michigan, we're reminded of your power and your majesty. Lord, we want to thank you also for conscience, Lord, the things, the laws that you've written in the very heart of man that restrains evil, Lord, that shows us your holiness and your law. Lord, as we gather to think about laws tonight, Lord, we are reminded of the highest law. And Lord, most of all, we want to thank you for the cross, the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus that reminds us of your love and your grace. Lord, thank you for suffering for us. Thank you for breaking the power of death. Thank you for giving sinners like me a way of salvation. Lord, I want to pray tonight for the eternal souls gathered in this room, Lord, that they would know your grace, your forgiveness, your love, and your mercy. Lord, for our civil servants gathered here as well, Lord, we pray that you would fill them with wisdom to lead us well. So, Lord, we commit this meeting and this evening to you. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We are now at item B3, report on the Summer Youth Employment Program. Good evening, folks.
Good evening. Thanks a lot for having us out tonight. We're really excited. My name is Eric Stewart. I'm the director of YOU, and this is my colleague Paige Farrell, and she's the My City program manager for the Summer Youth Employment Program. Excited to share some information with you today, update you for the 2018 version of the program. And to kick it off, we have a short video. It's about a 5-minute video, so hang in there.
I think people should choose YOU because it's a good way to express yourself and just show who you really are.
It's more to be more independent in life and show responsibility.
To make money.
To work with other people.
Like, you can't lose here. Like, it's the best opportunity I ever got in my whole life, like, literally.
YOU's out here to help you, and it helped you for a very, very long time.
It's an easy learning experience.
My favorite part is about making new friends and learning new skills.
It helps a lot for your future.
So YOU is an organization that focuses on programs that benefit youth in the community. And specifically, the My City Summer Youth Employment Program focuses on 14 to 21-year-olds in the city of Kalamazoo, with the goal being to provide them with a summer youth employment opportunity where they're out in the community, as well as coming to YOU for career training programs. And the My City program encompasses 3 different pathways. The first pathway is called Career 101, and that's specifically for the 14 and 15-year-olds, where they're placed on what we call neighborhood crews. So they're out with a group of about 8 14 and 15-year-olds and supervised by one of our crew leaders in the various neighborhoods throughout the city of Kalamazoo, and they're working on neighborhood improvement projects. And at the same time, they also have a portion of career training where they come into YOU and do some career exploration, financial literacy, entrepreneurship activities, that sort of thing. The second group is called Career 2.0, and that is for the 16 to 21-year-olds, where they are placed at job sites out in the community. So we have a group of community employer partners, about 40 to 50, I believe, this year. So those Career 2.0 participants are out at job sites supervised by that employer, getting kind of real-world job experience. And at the same time, they also have the career training opportunities here at YOU throughout the summer. And in addition to that, have the opportunity to go on what we call talent tours, which are kind of like field trips where they're able to go out to local businesses and college campuses to explore, to see a bit about what those companies have to offer and explore some career options in this community. And then the final group, which is Career Now, actually provides a training program. So that's for students who are 18 and older or who have graduated from high school at age 17. And they are able to participate in an actual training program where they're paid for that training and they end the summer certified in that field. And this year we have about 5 different certification programs, including things like culinary arts, early childhood development, welding, that sort of thing.
We kind of direct the youth that are on our crew. We get different crews and set up at the beginning of the year. We come in, we meet the kids and everything, and YOU branches them off into different groups. Each group has a crew leader that kind of like shows the kids how to use the tools, make sure they're wearing safety vests, safety goggles and gloves, and anytime we're migrating from one area to the next, making sure we're in specific crosswalks and crossing only when red lights say come on across the street, things like that. Actually, I love this job. When I found the opportunity to come work for YOU and do a little group leadership, crew leadership with the kids, I enjoyed it.
I love being outside, so being outside and getting able to joke around with kids, not only just like having fun, but like teaching them the right goals to pursue in life.
The impact that I want to have on the youth is just being a mentor, someone that they can come to and ask questions, whether it be personal life or whether it's career readiness or anything like that. I just want to be a good example and another resource for them to reach out to if they need help with anything. I would say the most important thing I would say is respect. So having respect for themselves, having respect for people in authority, having respect for their peers, their colleagues, just learning that respect is key.
Have fun. I mean, it's like you have a supervisor and they're gonna drill you sometimes and they're gonna make sure that you're doing the right job, but they're only doing that for the best part of you.
These are future business leaders of America. These small things that YOU teaches them are very big for later in their life, and I want them to take this with it and just build off of it. Just take these small things that's coming from them, that little bit of guidance, and just feed their potential and let themselves know that, you know, you could be great.
So we hope that gives a little bit of perspective on what we're doing at YOU all summer. This past year, let's get you some statistical data. If I can get past it. Working on it here. We were able to serve 357 young folks in the city of Kalamazoo over the summer within those three pathway programs that we discussed in the video, putting almost $400,000 in their pockets over the summertime. That's a picture of them there at WMU. These are some statistics. We had an evaluation conducted by IEval this year to give us some information on what we're doing well and what we can do better, judging fidelity of our services. And this is some customer participant satisfaction data for each of the 3 pathways. It's not perfect, and so we strive for all those to be 100, and that's what we'll be working on this next year.
All right, so this slide, we wanted to just give you a sense of the process for both planning and implementation of the program. So this shows kind of a general timeline of what has now grown to be a year-long planning and implementation process. So right now in the fall, we're in both the planning and outreach stages. So outreach including potential partner job sites as well as outreach to youth in the community. Last year for summer 2018, we launched the application in February. For 2019, our current planning is to launch the application in late January, and it'll remain open until early April. And then as those applications come in, we are evaluating them and determining eligibility, and then moving in the spring to the orientation and placement process. And then mid-spring, while that's going on, we're hiring and training staff, taking care of the logistics of work permits and documents, and then in late June we move into that operational phase. That takes us to August, and then of course once we wrap up, then we take some time to evaluate and then report back, and then the planning begins again. This, which you also see in that final report that you have, kind of just gives a brief snippet for each of those three pathways and kind of where the focus lies. And we have been very intentional and continue to do so as we're tweaking some of these pathways in making sure that each pathway kind of scaffolds. Now, while it's certainly not required that a participant be in Career 101 in order to be in Career 2.0, for those participants who have that opportunity, we're very intentional about making sure that the career exploration and the career pathway development, along with that hands-on experience, is building. And then in that final, the Career Now phase, giving the participants that opportunity for a credential. That being said, for 2019, we intend to offer what we're calling priority placement. And so that's just another way to help kind of build this scaffolding process where people who had the opportunity to participate in 2018, if they wish to participate in 2019, will have the opportunity for a spot to be held rather than going through the random draw process. Another exciting aspect for 2018 is that we had the opportunity to implement a customized online system. And so what you're seeing here is a screenshot of kind of that home page where the participants applied through the online system, and then that process gave them a login to a system that they used throughout the summer. This allowed us to kind of streamline all of the reporting and the processes, things like timesheets, evaluations, along with online modules that supplemented that career training when they came into YOU. They also had the opportunity to go online and complete online modules that directly related to what they were doing during their time at YOU and out at their work site. The other piece of this that we're currently building and implementing is a goal-oriented career pathway piece that will be embedded in that online system. So this next slide shows you, first of all, a snapshot where you can see some of those online modules, the types of topics in that upper left-hand corner, like working in teams, goal setting, managing your attitude, that sort of thing. On the right is just kind of a snippet of a mock-up of what we're calling the goal tracker, which is a piece, like I said, that we're currently developing, but that will be tied directly to that career pathway building and how setting small goals and action items each step of the way is what leads to that ultimate long-term goal accomplishment.
I'm going to whip through the last few slides just out of respect for everybody's time, but this is some more data that was presented to us from IEVAL on our evaluation. As you can see, some of those numbers aren't perfect. They're in the 70s. We need to see those in the 90s. But what we hope it does show you is a lot of folks are learning a lot about those critical aspects of finding a job, maintaining a job, and all the wraparounds that go with being a trained, career-minded person. Recommendations from IEVAL. I didn't want to come here and tell you guys everything was all sunshine, so I wanted to make sure you guys know that we're very serious about improving every year. And my boss, Dave Campbell, is sitting back there, and a big thank to him is continuous improvement, and that we make sure all of our programs are following that mantra. And so we know we need to be more consistent across the programs with each particular, particularly within 101. And that's, you know, how we manage programs. We need to manage accountability the same and repercussions the same. We know that work experiences should provide exposure to skill development, not just focused on how to be an employee. We need to embed more of that skill development, even at the younger ages, in 14 and 15. As you can see in Career Now, we have a heavy emphasis on that. We need to get that younger. And we need to ensure that technological glitches with the modules are worked out prior to launching. We had some issues with that this past year that will not be repeated. This is just some quotes. Everybody loves quotes. We had some great partners that I'll show you here in just a second. I was one of our young men who was working in the culinary arts program at Zazio's there, preparing lunch for a bunch of people. But a lot of these quotes are embedded in the handout that you have there. But you know, drink them in. I'm not going to read them to you guys, but it's pretty powerful statements about what's possible over the summertime. And we don't do this alone. This isn't a YOU thing. These are all of our partners over the summer. That's a pretty incredible list of folks that step up around this community to help young folks out in the development of their, their workforce skills. So we're very thankful to all these people for helping us out, very thankful to the city, very thankful to the Foundation for Excellence and all the support that's provided. What's next for us? We're revamping 101 and 2.0 to have a much heavier private sector focus. We want kids to get out on real job sites. It's hard to find genuine work sites for 14 and 15-year-olds. It's a challenge every year, and I get why, child labor laws and all that. So we're working on working on some of those barriers to that. Again, private sector leading the way. We're hosting our first private sector employer forum for my city on December 4th and 6th at KRESA. We're excited about that. In alignment with other Foundation for Excellent Youth initiatives, the All Things Possible program, we will be reserving slots for all participants in the All Things Possible program for Career 101 next year, those that are aged into it appropriately. And so that's a little bit about our summer. Happy to entertain any questions if anybody has them.
Questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Cooney.
First of all, thanks. Really impressive what you're doing. I just have a couple questions. Sure. One, what is your plans for linking with All Things Possible? What links do you see there?
Yeah, well, we know that, first of all, we work with Sean Fletcher and his entire department very closely over the summertime. But we know that they started a workforce development end for some of the older kids in All Things Possible, taking them out to different workplaces, getting them accustomed to those things. And so it's a common sense next step for them to actually get into a job experience, into a work experience the next summer. So we think if we can link all these programs together where there's some continuity, back to the scaffolding piece, continuity throughout the summer, that's hopefully, going from recreation into more skill development, into more productive things that we can put some money in kids' pockets over the summer. That'd be a powerful experience for young folks to be a part of.
Okay. Do you still use Lawrence? Do you guys go out there to that?
Sure.
You still do that?
We'll go anywhere. We had a group out there doing auto technician this past year. So we worked closely with Tom Richardson and his crew, and they were great to us.
Oh, great. And the last question I have is, I think last year or the year before this one, you linked people to jobs when the summer was over.
Correct.
In the career. Are you guys still doing that?
Absolutely. Particularly this last year, we were excited to move the age up to 21, which is a big jump from 18 to 21.
Yeah.
What we know is that youth just doesn't end at 18. You got to have a job to go to, and so we were seeing more and more folks come through our doors. They were actually up to age 24.
Wow.
And we knew that they could benefit from an experience like ours. Now, certainly the bulk of the participants are 14, 15, 16-year-olds. But we did have some of those outliers in that Career Now pathway where we were providing credentials and certifications that really benefited from that and that did find jobs and that are now working. Obviously, if they're in high school, the first focus is for them to go back to school and be productive there. But we're all about finding anybody their next regular, unsubsidized opportunity.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Just want to say thank you for the work. Every year you seem to be getting better and better at this and continuing to learn. It's interesting that you've got the evaluation part. We discussed that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That piece is so important to identify where we see opportunities, where we see course corrections and all of those things. And I know you're working closely with KidNet too,
yes,
if I'm not
sir.
mistaken.
Yes, sir.
So, thank you very, very much.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Commissioners, we have one proclamation tonight. Commissioner Anderson will be reading this for CRPS Awareness Month.
Thank you, Mayor. Is Matt Rutledge here? Thank you, Matt. Mayor will be coming down to the podium. I have to admit, this is a somewhat complicated proclamation, which is full of some medical terminology, so I will try to work through that. This proclamation from the City of Kalamazoo is for the Complex Regional Pain Syndrome Awareness Month of November 2018. So whereas complex regional pain syndrome, known as CRPS, is a form of chronic pain that is believed to be caused by the malfunction of or damage to the peripheral and central nervous systems. Most commonly, CRPS develops after an injury, surgery, stroke, or heart attack. The underlying cause of CRPS is not well understood, making this disease difficult to diagnose. And whereas the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke and the National Institutes of Health estimate that between 2% to 5% of individuals with peripheral nerve injury present with CRPS. And whereas fewer than 200,000 Americans have CRPS, and the disease was recently designated as a rare disorder by the National Organization for Rare Disorders. More prevalent in women, CRPS can occur in anyone at any age and can vary in severity from self-limiting and mild to severe and debilitating. And whereas CRPS is divided into two types, 1 and 2, also known as reflex sympathetic dystrophy syndrome, occurs after an illness or injury which did not damage nerves in the affected limb. 2, once referred to as causalgia, is when there is an associated and confirmed nerve injury. Treatment is similar for both types and may involve a combination of therapies, including medication, physical and occupational therapy, interventional procedures, and psychosocial behavioral management. And whereas the long-term outlook for individuals with CRPS varies from person to person. Treatment is most effective when it is started early in the course of the disease. Now therefore I, David Anderson, on behalf of the 52nd City Commission, and Bobby J. Hopewell, Mayor of the City of Kalamazoo, do hereby proclaim November 2018 to be Complex Regional Pain Syndrome Awareness Month in Kalamazoo, and encourage citizens to increase awareness about the rare diseases like CRPS and the importance of a healthy and active lifestyle.
Thank you.
We are at item C, the adoption of the formal agenda. Are there any changes, Commissioners? Any? Oh, Mr. Attorney?
Mayor, I'd like to call your attention to two matters. First is I'd like to add a closed session to discuss the matter of Killa versus City as regards a negotiation and strategy. And the other is to point out an error that will be corrected in the final version. Item 12, regarding the adoption of a resolution for the Downtown Economic Growth Authority's proposed TIF and development plans. In the documents you have, there's a typographical error. It refers at one point to the TIP plan instead of the TIF plan, and we caught that error, and it'll be corrected in the notice and in the minutes.
Anyone in the audience wanting to comment on items under the consent agenda? That's items under F. That item will need to be moved to the regular agenda. If you have such an item, please indicate at this time. Commissioner Sykes?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Had my finger up right before Attorney Robertson.
I apologize, I didn't see it.
Yep, no worries. I'd like to remove item 16 and put that on the regular agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. The Communications Manager, Ritzman?
None, Your Honor.
And, okay. I will now open a public hearing under E1 to receive comments on a resolution amending the boundaries of the Industrial Development District Number 95 to include additional property owned by Shupan and Sons at 4200 and 4233 Davis Creek Court. Anyone in the audience wanting to comment on this item, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is John Barry. I'm president of Shupan Aluminum and Plastic Sales, which is a division of Shupan and Sons. I reside at 7366 Cottage Oaks in Portage. But I'm here to talk about 2 expansion projects that we're considering within our company. One being at our aluminum and plastic sales division, and the other one which is at our electronics recycling plant. Before I did that, I thought I'd give just a 30,000-foot view of who we are as a company. Shupan and Sons, we've been residing in Kalamazoo for the last 50 years. We really have three divisions within our company. One being in industrial recycling and electronics recycling. That'd be one division of our company. New material distribution and manufacturing services. And then beverage container recycling associated with the 10-cent deposit on aluminum and plastic products that are returned to the grocery stores. Our company as a whole has 14 locations across 3 states, or 5 states, I should say, and we have 600 employees in total. Specifically, the aluminum and plastic sales division, which is the division that I'm responsible for, we are located at 4200 Davis Creek Court. We have 3 locations within that division, the one in Kalamazoo located there, one in Toledo, and one in Dayton, Ohio. The expansion that we're considering doing is about 40,000 square feet. We're looking at adding about 14,000 square feet to the east end of the building and about 23,000 square feet to the west end, along with 3,000 square feet of office space. The project in total is about $4.5 million. We have committed to 50 new employees over the next 3 years, and it should be about a 6 to 8 month project. I'd also like to note, too, that this division of Shupan & Sons has 300 of our 600 employees, and we've experienced massive growth over the last 10 years. 10 years ago, we had about 65 employees within this division, and now we have 300. We're also very involved in the community. We do a lot with Big Brothers Big Sisters. Mark Shupan has been very involved in starting Covenant Academy, as well as the Momentum program. And one of the best aspects of all this is that we've been able to hire a lot of these employees, which has been a really nice benefit and a win-win for sure. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to speak on this item? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Sykes.
Second.
Supported by Commissioner Cooney. Discussion? Commissioner Anderson?
I just want to remind all of us here tonight that just in the not so distant past, we recognize Shupan & Son as a great corporate partner of the City of Kalamazoo and for all the community involvement work they have done over many, many, many years. And it seems to me that oftentimes, whether it's one program or another, programs at Kick Pool, we have found that Shupan & Sons has been there to help support that work. So I just want to once again thank them for being here in Kalamazoo, doing this good work, and being a good community partner. Really appreciate it.
Other comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. I'll now open a public hearing for E2, public hearing to receive comments on a resolution establishing industrial development district around the perimeter of the parcels owned by Shupan and Sons, LLC, at 2730 Mill Cork Street, 3100 Miller Road, and 2900 Miller Road. Anyone in the audience wanting to comment on this item, please step forward. You have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city.
Good evening. My name is Corey Peischer. I'm the Vice President of Shupan and Sons Electronics Recycling Department. I live in Climax, Michigan, but our building is 2730 Mill Cork. As John said, we've been in business 50 years, and I think our reputation precedes us in this meeting, so appreciate that. But want to give you a little history on what we do in the Electronics Recycling Division. So we recycle for some of the biggest names in the country. We started 5 years ago with Shupan with 2 employees, and we're now up to 71 employees. We're doing in excess of 1 million pounds every single month of electronics. And with electronics, if they're not handled properly and they end up in a landfill over time, there's dangerous metals that can leak out into the environment. So we're helping to protect not only our local environment, but all over the country. We have a national footprint. So we've seen an extreme growth in the demand for our business and our services over the last few years, which prompted us about 1.5 years ago to purchase the location at 2730 Mill Cork. We've since grown out of that building, so we're looking to make an investment into expanding that so that we can add more jobs and that way so we can expand our services to our current customers. So establishing the industrial development district and eventually allowing us to apply for a tax abatement for that property will allow us to do so. We currently have just under 30,000 square feet there, and we're looking to add about 80,000 square feet. We're still finalizing the plans. We hope to break ground in the spring, but it's going to be anywhere from a $3.5 to a $4.5 million investment in just that building alone. And I know John has already hit on some of the organizations that we have partnered with, but specifically to electronics recycling, we work very closely with Momentum program. We currently have 3 full-time employees from them that have been with us for quite a while. And to go a step above that, our operations manager has actually volunteered his time. He's a one-on-one mentor now in Momentum program. So in addition to that, we've partnered with Bethany Christian Services, and we now have 2 employees that are Syrian war refugees. They don't speak any English. We've been able to hire them in and make accommodations so that they can safely work in our environment as well. We work very closely with MRC, with both hiring individuals to work in our building as well as outsourcing some of our jobs with them. So this granting of the Industrial Development District and eventually the tax abatement will allow us to continue to do those programs and invest in the community. Are there any questions on the electronics recycling? All right.
You can comment after he's completed his 4 minutes.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wanting to speak on this item? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Sykes, supported by Commissioner Urban. Is there discussion? I do want to call out the work that Shupan does with Momentum particularly. I know that was mentioned here tonight. They are one of, I think, 50 plus partners that Momentum has been working with. Part of their work connected with our work through Shared Prosperity when we convened employers. And I think Mark Shupan and his team were one of the first companies that said, yes, we would be there and want to gather and learn more and be a part of and helping connect individuals needing employment with employment opportunities. And I think Momentum certainly grew significantly since that time. So that work is so important, and I didn't even know about Bethany Christian Services, which is another great effort. So connecting our momentum dots and our partnership with Momentum and employers. So I appreciate that work and hope it continues. Much success. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Sykes?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. The consent agenda, please, Mr. Manager.
We have the following items for approval, with one being held until November 19, 2018. First, the approval of a sole source purchase with Ferguson Waterworks for the Neptune AMI Gateway and Software Package in the amount of $187,766.34. Next is the approval of a 2-year contract with Phoenix Outfitters, LLC for public safety uniforms in the amount of $254,823.08. Next is the approval of a 2-year contract with Water Solutions Unlimited for the purchase of sodium hexametaphosphate in the amount of $269,280. Next is the agreement with the United States Geological Survey for hydraulic modeling and flood inundation mapping for the Kalamazoo River, Portage Creek, and Axtell Creek in the amount of $307,000. Next is the approval of a 3-year contract with Best Way Disposal Incorporated to perform monthly residential brush pickup during the months of April through October in the amount of $334,110. Next is the approval of a 1-year contract extension with Constellation New Energy Gas Division LLC for natural gas to be used to heat selected city facilities in the amount of $500,000. Next is the first reading of an ordinance to add Chapter 50, Zoning to Cities Code of Ordinances, and repeal Section 6.1 of Appendix A, Off-Street Parking and Loading, and schedule a public hearing on November 19, 2018. Next is a first reading of an ordinance to rezone properties in the Northside neighborhood as a step to implement the Northside Neighborhood Plan and schedule a public hearing for November 19, 2018. Next is the adoption of a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign a 3-party agreement for services between the City of Kalamazoo, Foundation for Excellence, and the Kalamazoo Community Foundation for a period of 3 years. Next is the adoption of a resolution scheduling a public hearing for November 19, 2018 regarding an application from Chupan & Sons, LLC for an industrial facilities tax exemption certificate. Next is the adoption of a resolution accepting a grant from the Michigan State Historic Preservation Office Certified Local Governments Grant Program in the amount of $11,150 to be used to plan and implement a Historic District Commission training workshop for local and regional historic district commissions. Next is the adoption of a resolution setting a public hearing for December 3, 2018 regarding the Downtown Economic Growth Authority's proposed tax increment financing and development plans, and scheduling November 19, 2018 at 6 p.m. as an opportunity for taxing authorities levying taxes subject to capture under the TIF plan to meet with the City Commission and provide comment and recommendations on the plan. Next is the adoption of a resolution recognizing Drive for Life Foundation as a nonprofit organization operating in the community for the purpose of obtaining a charitable gaming license. Next is the approval of a service agreement with BJ West LLC regarding the tax-exempt property on Elcott Street that will be occupied by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Next is the approval of a 2-year agreement with the Central County Transportation Authority to provide public safety services at the Kalamazoo Transportation Center and Metro Transit Campus. Next is the approval and acceptance of easements from Circle K for water main installed as part of the Circle K construction project at 4851 and 4921 South Sprinkle Road. Next is the approval and acceptance of an easement from Parkway Flats LLC for water main and sanitary sewer installed as part of the Parkway Flats project. Next is the approval of mayor's appointment and reappointment to boards and commissions, the reappointment of Carl Brown to the Downtown Development Authority for a term expiring on March 31st, 2022, and the appointment of Nicole Sable to the Historic Preservation Commission for a term expiring on March 31, 2021. Next is the approval of the minutes from the City Commission meetings on October 1 and October 15, 2018. And finally, the approval of the sale of 1109 North Park Street to Jesus Rodriguez Reyes and Leticia Rodriguez Medina for $120.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Commissioners, the requested action is a motion a motion to approve items 1 through 15, hold item 21, and approve items 17 through 20, holding item 21 until November 19, 2018, and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support. Moved by Commissioner Cooney, supported by Commissioner Anderson. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Mr. Manager, regular agenda, please.
We have the acceptance of the 2018 Justice Assistance Grant Award in the amount of $92,200 from the U.S. Department of Justice.
Commissioner Sykes.
Sorry. So I know we received a memo from you, Attorney Robinson, on your feelings about, or your assessment about whether or not the conditions of this grant that we'd be accepting would interfere with the resolution that we passed, or whether or not the resolution that we passed would interfere with this grant. And so I guess I took it off. I read your finding. I also, got back online and now I've printed out the special conditions, because I guess I'm just looking for a little bit more of an explanation for why these things don't interfere, if that makes sense. And you've noted sections 41 through 46. I think 46 for me is a big one, in terms of notifying ICE within, or giving ICE 48 hours heads up before we release an undocumented individual. I know that we don't incarcerate individuals, but I also know that we do detain individuals from time to time before they end up at the county jail, and so I'm wondering how that fits in, and I'm hoping you can help me better understand that, and maybe just the overall general explanation for why you don't think this applies.
Well, you've got the better of me. I haven't looked at those conditions for a 3 weeks. But in answer to your questions, while we may detain somebody, the releases would be by the county sheriff. And so that's the agency that would be required to inform. The other, and again, I don't have the text of the resolution that was adopted by the commission in front of me, but large measure that has nothing to do with separating children from families, which was the thrust of the resolution. It also talked about, again, cooperating or using resources to cooperate with the Trump administration's immigration policy. Again, the statutes are written so that you can't interfere. And as long as you're not interfering with ICE, then you're fine. There's no obligation, and the federal government can't require local municipalities and states to actually engage in carrying out immigration law, because that's not within our scope of authority. That's in the scope of authority of the federal government. And there's a couple of Supreme Court cases to that extent where particularly border states, Arizona comes to my mind, attempted to be a little more proactive, and the courts have said, no, that's an obligation of the national government, not state governments. So because the city is not acting in furtherance of federal and enforcing federal law, the only thing what we can't do is interfere with federal law. And there's nothing in the resolution that would prohibit us, and it doesn't encourage interfering with federal law. It just says we are not to, I don't have the text of the resolution in front of me, but it says nothing about that would, in my opinion, preclude us from taking the money under that grant.
Okay. I guess I'll just note this, and then, if we want to discuss it, or if there are citizens' comments on it. But in the memo that was set before us tonight, It notes that the resolution called on President Trump to stop the practice of separating children from their families based on their immigration status, as well as prohibiting the use of city resources, including staff time, facilities, or funds to separate children from their families, assist other governmental agencies in separating children from their families, or otherwise detaining an individual based on their immigration status. So I hear what you're saying. So this is specifically about separating children from their families. I guess for me, that would include, you know, a family living here whose mother is undocumented and gets deported. To me, that's still a separation of that family. And you know, it's very possible that my colleagues, when we passed this, had a different understanding of that language. That was my feeling. And then I think, I do note that each one of these special conditions are titled non-interference. But that includes, let's see, so non-interference means making sure that the federal government gets information regarding citizenship or immigration status from us. So us, if we require staff to not forward that information, then that's considered interference the way that I read it. And you're an attorney, so I'm saying this to say these are my questions, and I am not asserting that I know this better than you do. 43, so we are obligated, it's still non-interference, so we cannot get in the way of any person within our organization contacting ICE, which to me is another, I know it's worded non-interference, but to me feels like something that we are actively being complicit in this system. No public disclosure of certain law enforcement sensitive information. So this specifically, as they explain it, lists out, you know, if ICE is here in the city looking for folks, and I wonder, you know, how does that apply to us as the city? If a staff person, you know, shares on Facebook for personal reasons, I'll use myself, I've done this before, to say, hey, word is so-and-so has been spotted here. People keep an eye out. I mean, does that fall into this, considering this, there can be no public disclosure of information, including whether or not they're here, in order to conceal, harbor, or shield individuals from, let's see, shield from detection any fugitive from justice, or any alien, but I choose to say undocumented individual who has come to, entered, or remains in the United States in violation of, you know, 8 U.S. whatever. And so I worry about that. If we're asking folks, you know, if we don't want to be complicit in the separation of children and families, you know, does an individual, as a part of this organization, this entity, then do we find ourselves liable for that? Let's see, and then the final one is Section 46, notice of scheduled release, and that's the thing that I had already mentioned with the 48-hour notice. I also know that we are co-grantees, if you will, or we're the grantee, and then I believe the county would be considered the sub-grantee. So then by agreeing to this grant, does that then require the county sheriff to disclose, give 48 hours heads up, you know, these sorts of things? And if so, then are we, by an entity, being complicit in, where's the resolution language, being complicit in assisting other governmental agencies in separating children from their families if the county is required to give 48 hours notice before release of detention, required to send in any sort of information that we have on documentation or citizenship status, if the county's the one doing it, right? Besides, so I want to be really clear. I want to respect your legal opinion and recognize that you are the expert in law and not me, right? And I'll tell you, reading through some of this was like, I don't even know what this means. But I am deeply concerned about those sections. And then finally, I'll just note, and I don't have this section, it's closer to the front, but I should probably, I'll try to find the number while I'm talking. Or bring it back up during discussion. But there's also a number here that talks about us not being able to offer preference or in violation of religious rights. I know we've got a non-discrimination ordinance, and I know the way that things have gone with the federal government, and this, I think it's the Supreme Court case, the bakery who decided not to serve a couple. My concern then would be, if we've got this non-discrimination ordinance, let's say for instance housing, because we're talking about housing a lot, let's say that we have an organization that, maybe not housing, because this is DOJ. So I don't know. But just imagine we have an organization that we know discriminates based on LGBT status. And maybe this is somebody who's had to face correction from the city under our non-discrimination ordinance. Does that then get in the way? Because this says specifically that we can't infringe on the religious rights of entities and organizations under federal law. And finally, my last question is, because the non-discrimination ordinance is an ordinance, and because KDPS does enforce ordinances, and it's our city staff that, the attorney's office that would enforce an ordinance, the non-discrimination ordinance, then do we get in trouble by having, if somebody says, well, it's against my religion to allow this person a job. It's against my religion to allow this person a home. Do we find ourselves liable then? You know what I mean? So those are my big questions. I'm going to shut up. Oh, it's special condition number 20 that talks about discrimination on the basis of religion, a religious belief, a refusal to hold a religious belief, or refusal to attend or participate in a religious practice. So that's the item number for that. I'm going to shut up now because I've been talking too long.
So, Commissioner, I don't know if you want to respond to that or to the questions.
Well, I prefer not to, those are detailed questions, and if I'd had something like that when I wrote the memo, I would have focused in on those issues. I didn't have specific concerns to focus in on. I can say that every year after we sign this agreement, and there is a disclosure under penalty of perjury that I have to sign, the mayor has to sign, that we're complying with all the requirements. And I will admit that since the Trump administration has taken office, those disclosure forms are much longer and much more detailed. And every year, for the last 2 years, I have actually taken the disclosure statement and have gone and looked up the specific statutes that are referenced and the law behind those statutes to make sure that I have to sign under penalty of perjury that we're following the rules, if you will, and then I give that guidance to the mayor so he can make the same statement. So I anticipate doing the same. So it is I take my time with that, I take it seriously because it's my name at the bottom of the page. So I don't do that cavalierly, certainly. But in answer to your questions, you've raised a lot of them. I don't have specific answers to them this evening without, again, taking the question, looking at the specific language in the agreement, and then perhaps even going so far as to look up the statute that's referenced. I did a little bit of that in preparation for this. My understanding was, can we enter into this agreement given the resolution? You've asked specific questions, and I feel comfortable that we can go forward and do that, but you've asked some interesting and pointed questions that deserve answers, but I'm not prepared to give them this evening.
And if I could, I just want to acknowledge for the rest of the commission, city staff, and any people in the public here tonight listening or watching, I do want to own the fact that, you know, I sent my questions through the city manager's office, you know, in a meeting, and I understand that, like, and that was sort of it. It was like, I've got all these detailed questions, but in general, here's what I want to know. And so I want to be really fair to you and noting that you did indeed just get that general question and not those details. So that is a failure on my part of not, you know, calling, following up with you and giving you those details. So I apologize for that, and I appreciate your willingness to look further into this. I guess the other thing is, the other sort of question 9 at my brain is, well, no, there's 2. So in response to that certification that has to be signed by the mayor and by you, Attorney Robinson, I'm wondering if, because this is such a major topic in terms of the political climate today, I'm wondering if that is something that the rest of us commissioners will see. I don't know if, Mayor, and you might know the answer to this, if you sign something on behalf of the city, then is it also considered to be on behalf of the entire commission? So that's one question I have, is whether or not we'll also be able to comb through that document. And then number 2, I know that the county, in passing their resolution, had some conversation about the acceptance of these funds, and their corporate counsel was concerned about accepting these funds or passing a resolution similar to ours because of these new, corporate counsel said, these new requirements set this year. You know, she felt the 2 would be in conflict, but then they moved forward because their understanding was that the conflict would be on us, not on them, because we're the primary grantee, which, you know, okay. So I also, I don't know. I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but that is concerning to me that corporate counsel feels that way. You know, the county's corporate counsel feels that way. It is. I would love to, with this particular certification, if the commission does decide to move forward to the next step, and then there's that affidavit that needs to be signed. If it is at all possible, I would love if all of us could comb through that language, because it's easy, I think, with, you know, documents this thick, to miss, you know, the finer details. And, you know, I'll just state my position on this for tonight.
So can we, let's reserve reserve this time for questions, and we'll have discussion opportunities.
And the affidavits aren't brought back to the commission, because the commission has authorized the execution of the grant, and the affidavits are just a follow-up. So you've already taken action. I mean, certainly if you want to look at those affidavits, not a problem. But, you know, again, those are the ones we sign under the penalty of perjury, that we're not violating the conditions. So, as I said, they've gotten a little more detailed the last couple of years than they were in previous years. Obviously, if the commission has concerns about this, there's no obligation to take the $9,200 or $92,000 from the feds if you are reluctant to do so, or if you have concerns that we might be getting into thin ice.
Other questions for you? I think Commissioner.
I just wanted to ask, will we have a chance to discuss this item after it's been moved? But before we vote? I'll reserve my remarks till then. It's a question, but doesn't pertain to this exact thing.
Commissioner Quinn?
Yeah, I want to thank Commissioner Sykes for raising this issue, because I think that ICE is doing great harm to our community and to our country. Wait, I'm going to, okay. No, I got a question. All right. I got a question. Gotcha. And with their policies, what I think is important for me is to know, what is the policy of the sheriff? I don't believe that every undocumented person that goes into the jail, that the sheriff says, well, I'm going to notify ICE that this person is here. My understanding is that that only happens if somebody is guilty of a serious crime. and then they would have to notify. That's my understanding. I don't know if that's correct. Do you know if that's correct?
I do not know what the sheriff's policy is or what he does. Yeah, I'm not his attorney, so I don't know.
Right.
Commissioner Anderson?
Just a couple more details on this specifically. Is there a time frame related to this? Do we know about that as far as processing or dates to expect this back? That's question number one. Question number two, I think this primarily pays for protective gear. I think that's...
It's a gas spectrometer and
gas
interview
spectrometer
room
this time.
equipment.
Yeah, equipment. So how would we offset that in the budget, or would we? I guess that would be my second question if we were not to accept this. I think there's a couple other things, yeah.
So to answer your first question, we have until November 16th to accept these funds, 45 days from issuance. And we do not have funds set aside for the two items that this grant would cover, because that'd be supplanting.
I'm just sorry, just quick follow-up that. So what exactly does this equipment do for us? And
so it's two items. One is video recording equipment for our interview rooms that statutorily we are required to interview. And additionally, it's for a microscope for the crime lab that we have a countywide crime lab, so we're splitting the cost of that microscope with the county. It's a GC mass spec that's used to test things like pills and other narcotics. And we've never owned one, so.
Okay, so that said, it would presumably have to be acted on before our next meeting. We have until the 16th.
Other questions? Commissioner?
Sorry, a couple questions for the chief. I apologize. I hate to make you walk back up here. So just for clarification purposes then, I think what I hear you saying is, I'm assuming because we were required to have this video equipment in the past, what we're looking for is new equipment?
Yeah, we're trying to update the equipment we have that's outdated and not that reliable. And
Okay.
this is the funding that we were hoping to use on that
For
equipment.
that, okay. And then for the special microscope,
Yes.
this is also updated new equipment that we haven't had in the past, and I'm guessing what we have right now is also not as reliable?
Well, we aren't able to test some of the things that come into the crime lab, and then we send them off to the Michigan State Police that has this equipment, and there's a backlog as well as turnaround time.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner?
I'm sorry, this is not a question. I wanted to offer to answer Commissioner Cooney's question, but I can also save it for discussion.
Why don't we save it for discussion?
Okay. Yep.
Any other questions? Anyone wanting to comment on this item, please step forward. You have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Zachary Lester. I live in the city of Kalamazoo. First off, City Attorney Robinson, it might be a good idea for you to know what the sheriff's policy is regarding this, because you are required to not only certify the city of Kalamazoo's following stuff, but any sub-recipient of the grant the city is responsible for making sure that they're complying with these items. You guys passed a resolution that stated you weren't going to comply with ICE stuff, and that you were going to protect undocumented immigrants. And now this is up. I want to play for you guys something, seeing as you don't like to listen to the public. Maybe it's time you listen to yourselves.
In regard to COPS grants and the like that the Justice Department may administer, they might say, hey, unless you're willing to do this and that, or if you're doing something like this that we disapprove of, you're not going to be eligible for these monies. So that's not directing us, it's still our call, but the federal government could legally do that.
So it goes way, I just, looking forward to this opportunity right now to reaffirm our commitment to be a welcoming city. That's the primary thing. That's the primary thing. If we stay positive, take the high road when others go low, as Mr. Trump's predecessor has said, I think we'll be fine. I can rest assured about that.
I was so proud to be one of over 1,000 people that stood in our park yesterday in freezing cold for more than 2 hours to declare that Kalamazoo is a welcoming city. And that's the message that we're sending to the world.
I would rather that we, by our actions, by getting this press release out, by reaffirming our resolution of last March, that we impart courage to ourselves and to all of our citizens to stand by our values.
And we want to say that if you're in this community, you're welcome here. We care about you. We will protect you. We are with you.
Be it further resolved that the City of Kalamazoo is affirmed as a place where all foreign-born and native-born Americans can live, work, and play together, sharing each other's customs and ideals, and appreciate and promote cultural diversity. That's pretty much the last paragraph of your Welcoming Cities statement.
And we've got such a vibrantly diverse city, and some really, I feel like in a city like Kalamazoo, this goes without saying, but you know, we have residents who deserve and need our support and need for us to stand, I've said before, as you know, the first line of defense against anything that should seek to inhibit their rights. And I'm happy to be able to do so, and I'm happy to say that, you know, and I'll let everybody speak for themselves, but I know that, you know, I work with a body of people who agree with us, and I am greatly appreciative of that fact.
So I guess it's time to see if we take the high road or the low road, if we hold to our values, if Don Cooney standing in the park and say he would protect those here was an empty promise. Let's see if Commissioner Sykes was right in saying she works with a body that really agrees with the idea of a welcoming city, or if it was just another political lie to quiet upset citizens of our city.
Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Manju Freeman. I'm a student at Western Michigan University, a major in mechanical engineering and philosophy. I want to speak on the discrimination, the non-discrimination ordinance. Just from a logical perspective, my main issue is that with the subjectivity of the religious views aspect of it, with it not having an actual clear definition of what exactly is considered religious views. Rather if it's coming from pretty personal perspective, or if it's based off of a particular doctrine, is like my not really confusion, but it's a found inconsistency as to whether the city needs to establish what exactly is its own definition of the religious views, and how these can impact different decisions made as far as being able to say no to different services, or being able to like abide by certain rules. And my main question was where would be like the beginning, and the end of that, the extent of the religious views outlook, as well as regarding, things as far as on a subjective level. The religious views aspect of things is a subjective definition. However, queer identities and LGBTQ, those are objective definitions, most of them. So I'm saying if we have objective definitions and solidified definitions of what something actually is, then we have subjective definitions of what something actually might be. My issue with the religious views is that it can simply be a personal, viewpoint of something, rather than it can be manipulated in many ways. If you studied existentialism, there's multiple forms of religion and religion-dom, where there's the actual religion and document, or in doctrine, or dogma, that it is abide by, and then there's the religious background from the mass use of people used by it. Now, I understand that in multiple religious doctrines, we're talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. We're talking about the Old Testament, then there'll be multiple, mentionings of, condemning homosexuality and, like different LGBT identities. However, even homosexuality itself, the Bible does not considerably speak directly on all LGBT identities. It only speaks directly on homosexuality. It does not mention the entire queer community. So to embed it completely based off the doctrine itself, it does not embed the entire community itself. So if you're using the doctrine itself, then Christianity cannot, or Judaism, in fact, cannot be used as a direct doctrine for that. And if it's coming from, Muslim perspective, I can't really speak on all religions. I'm just going to speak on the three main Abrahamics. If we're going by Sharia law, you have to go by the law of the land. So if the law of the land embeds that we have a non-discrimination ordinance, then that means that as far as religious views, themselves, they do not have a direct link to actually having to actually having like a doctrine that backs any type of discrimination towards LGBT identities, at least not as a whole of the entire queer community. So it seems like there's more of a subjective, personal belief behind that, or rather for the individuals that are rejecting service. So I feel as though there is a premise that it's heavily flawed, or it's too subjective to definition to give it a solidified place in the document. So I believe it was, you said it was 43. Yeah, I feel like the city itself needs to give a solidified list of, what is considered religious views or some of the backings behind, the definitions within there, so that it has more of a solidified backing on what it actually is. Not giving a personal perspective on what I feel as though it should be. I'm just saying we should have definitions so that those loopholes cannot be found. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Commission. At the beginning of October, I spent 5 days, 65 miles from...
Sir, can we have your name and whether you live?
Michael Reiser. I'm homeless here in the city. At the beginning of October, I walked 5 days, 65 miles from Grand Rapids to Lansing. The last 3 days of that was strep throat with undocumented people. And they're human beings. And no human being should ever be illegal. Until, in my opinion, when it comes to this matter, until the federal government quits hunting down what they call illegal immigrants, the city of Kalamazoo should not receive a single dime from the federal government, and make Kalamazoo a truly sanctuary city where those individuals that happen to be in this country undocumented can safely work, reside, go to school, and better their lives, because they are human beings. And until the day the federal government decides to do something sane about illegal immigration, the city of Kalamazoo should remain a sanctuary city and not receive any funds from the federal government.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment on this side? Seeing no one.
Hi, I'm Ron. I'm part of the encampment group. I want to speak on my behalf on that illegal stuff. I too was one of those that walked 65 miles. You talked about that presentation about that nerve disorder. I have that. If it wouldn't been for that concentric group aiding me, but y'all want to get rid of them, I don't think so. They were doctors to me in my life. On the day that walk, I started in a wheelchair. I too was one that had that surgery, that nerve surgery. And I'm walking today more better than I was before I started that walk. And them people we allied with were Hispanic. I think I learned a few words of Spanish than I ever did when I was with them. And I told them when we marched and we gathered and we loved one another, I said, I want to learn 3 words in Spanish: lettuce, tomatoes, and cheese, because I like tacos. And I'm learning, and I told them when we walk again, when I come back and meet with y'all, I'm going to have that down in Spanish. And you want to take that love away like that. If it wasn't for them, I won't be up here. I might be limping. But they were like my doctors of angels. They didn't see me of color. They see me of love and care. And every time they see me, I was just here at that ceremony. I know you're walking, yeah. Oh, with all of y'all, by the grace of God. I was a peacemaker up in that camp. And I still am. And they love to hear me sing. They love it. But it's just the love I have for what they done for me. They was my physical therapist. I was supposed to have my physical therapy before I left, but they were my therapist. And we want to get rid of them. I mean, they might talk a different language, but if we stand in a circle and we cut ourselves, what we bleed? Red. We all the same. God didn't create us to be the same. If we was all the same, you think it's war now, it'd be really terrible. I'm glad he made a color rainbow. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's all I got.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to comment on this item? Seeing no one. Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to approve the item and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
I move that.
Moved by Commissioner Urban. Supported by Commissioner Anderson. We are in discussion. Commissioner Urban.
Well, I think it's possible for us to be a welcoming city. I also think it's possible for us to not be a defiant city. I think that we could put a very fine point on the particular interpretation of what seems to be in front of us in terms of that grant and make a big deal out of it. Or we could, as we're doing, become aware of what those conditions are and stay alert and wait for the opportunity that will surely come if things are proceeding the way they are now with the federal government. It's at some point in a few, who knows how distant future, the city will get a chance to be tested on just how welcoming we are with respect to ICE's policies and practices. But to pick a fight with them about something that's hypothetical right now seems like it's just asking for it's kind of like inviting trouble. I think, however, we had better prepare ourselves for when the situation arises that we will be tested. And will we at that point, as a city commission, for example, approve the city attorneys taking up the defense of a city employee who has done something, for example, like notifying the press that somebody who is an undocumented person is about to be arrested. Once it's in the press, it's open to the public, and everybody is free to act on protesting that or to go down to where the arrest is going to take place and to create an event that shines a light on that. Just as a hypothetical here, suppose the person who alerts the press that this is about to happen is a city employee. This is just one possible scenario. We can imagine millions of others, and that's not the point of prolonging this discussion. But I do think we had better do our research here and start to imagine in our minds what it might feel like when it comes to the point of having to act relatively quickly to defend a city employee, or to do some other action that is actually going to put some real life specific evidence in support of the resolution that we passed. I just think we need to get prepared for that. Having said that, I'm not troubled by approving this particular grant.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Clean?
Well, I have a couple things. Am I understanding that as a condition of this grant, there is a requirement that the federal government be notified if an undocumented person is being released from jail? Is that a part of this, a condition for receiving this grant? Is that what it said?
Mr. Attorney?
Again, I don't have the documents in front of me. There is a condition about that, notification, yes.
Well, I would like to say two things about that. One, That is completely an unjust requirement. That has nothing to do with the equipment that our police need to enforce what they're doing. But if that's a condition of this grant, I don't think I can support the acceptance of this grant, because I don't want to be a part of anything that's going to lead to sending people out of this country who have been living here and doing the right thing. Now, if the only people that had to be reported were murderers or somebody else, I'd take a different stand. But I don't know that tonight. I don't have that information. So as it stands now. But the other thing is, they could require us to do unreasonable things about every grant we receive from the federal government, and then we'd really be in trouble with our law enforcement in this city. I would hope that tomorrow's election will change that whole picture. That's my hope. But the way we are tonight, I don't think I can support this because of that clause.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Anderson.
So I am a bit of a quandary tonight, and that is based on this. You know, I had the opportunity to read through this 45-page grant agreement. I think that's how long it is, 22 pages maybe. Rather small font, so there's a lot in it. And obviously recognized some of that language that Commissioner Sykes, you know, brought to light tonight, specific to this grant. Now, we've gotten JAG grants every year for a long, long time, and is certainly something that's been very beneficial in assisting us get equipment and do the kinds of things that we need to do as a public safety department. So that has been very welcome. As much as other federal assistance has diminished, that we're still capable of getting this kind of assistance here in Kalamazoo. However, now we are in a position of having kind of a set of unanswered questions at our last regularly scheduled meeting before the time frame, you know, expires to make a determination on this. So I guess I have a question related to that. Is there any way for us to take any action? I mean, I guess I would assume that's not, but is there any way for more research to be done, for some specific questions to get answered to help inform us? Because I feel like we are ill-informed.
Yeah. So, Commissioner, we can allow for the attorney to go back and research, and I can call a special before the deadline. That is one option that there is. Because we can take action one night. Oh, yes, Commissioner.
Would there be a possibility of getting an extension on the time that we have to decide on this?
Chief, do you know the answer to that question?
We could request an extension, but I have no experience with that. So I don't know if that would be granted or not.
Commissioner Sykes?
Yeah, so I do have the language in front of me, and you know, I've sort of spread it out here because there's so many things here that I'm concerned with. We would have to cooperate with the Department of Justice in monitoring not just the award, but our operations. We would have to allow them to come in and do audits, monitor tasks, and that's in section 28. We would also be required of monitoring subawards, meaning monitoring the county in accordance with all applicable statutes, regulations, award conditions, and the DOJ grants financial guide. We're responsible for oversight of their spending, monitoring specific outcomes and benefits, and I think that's just with the specific equipment. We agree to submit upon request documentation of both our and our subawards policies and procedures. Oh, and also policies and procedures for monitoring our subawards, so how we're actually monitoring them. We would be required, that was section 30. In section 32, justice information sharing, we would have to comply with the DOJ's Global Justice Information Sharing Initiative guidelines. I don't know what that is, I didn't have a chance to look it up. But the recipient and any subrecipient at any tier must conform to the global standards package and all constituent elements where applicable. Let's see. Nope, that's not. There's a piece, section 40, about needing to comply with the National Instant Background Check System. I'm assuming we already do this, but I'm not sure, and I'm not sure if that has any relation to monitoring of undocumented individuals. But again, most importantly, item 42, we may in no way prohibit or in any way restrict any official from sending or receiving information regarding citizenship or immigration status. Any prohibition or restriction that violates this condition is an information communication restriction under this award. So we would not be allowed to, as far as I'm concerned, enforce our resolution by asking that no staff time go to the possible separation of children and families. Where is it in here? Yeah, so we may not fund to any subject, including our subgrantee, anyone with, I don't know, information communication restriction. I don't even know what that means. No public disclosure of certain law enforcement sensitive information. So again, none of us may, no public disclosure of federal law enforcement information in order to conceal, harbor, or shield. This is consistent with the purposes. Sorry, I'm trying to skip over all the numbers and stuff, so I'm sorry I'm reading slow. No public disclosure may be made of any federal law enforcement information in a direct or indirect attempt to conceal, harbor, or shield from detection any fugitive from justice under the statute, or any, again, it quotes alien, I prefer to say undocumented person who has come to, entered, or remains in the United States in violation of this code without regard to whether such disclosure would constitute or could form a predicate for a violation, without regard to whether such disclosure would constitute or could form a predicate for a violation. The recipient monitoring these responsibilities is also required to monitor the subrecipient to be compliant with this condition. So that would be us monitoring ourselves and also Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Office. Item 45, certain federal officers and employees, quote, have power without warrant to interrogate any, quote, alien or person believed to be an alien as to his right to be or to remain in the United States, have power without warrant to interrogate any alien or person believed to be an alien as to his right to be or to remain in the United States, under which that power may be exercised anywhere in or outside the United States. No state or local government entity, agency, or official may interfere with the exercise of that power to interrogate, quote, without warrant, by impeding access to any state or local government or government contracted correctional facility by such agents for the purpose of, quote, interrogating any alien or person believed to be an alien as to his or her right to be or to remain in the United States. So we, you know, they have full access, and we can't deny that access. And then finally, number 46, non-interference with federal law enforcement with the notice of scheduled release. This condition applies with respect to I'm sorry, I should have highlighted these things better. 46.1, non-interference with, quote, removal process, notice of scheduled release date and time, consonant with federal law enforcement statutes, local government, a 90-day, for an alien incarcerated by a state or local government, a 90-day, quote, removal period during which the federal government shall detain and then shall remove an alien from the U.S. begins no later than the date the alien is released from confinement. It says it really simply somewhere. Current DHS practice is ordinarily to request advance notice of scheduled release as early as practicable, at least 48 hours. Yeah, so no state or local government entity, agency, or official, including a government contracted correctional facility, may interfere with the, quote, removal process by failing to provide, as early as practicable, advance notice to DHS of the scheduled release date and time for a particular alien. If a state or local government or government contracted correctional facility receives from DHS a formal written request pursuant to the INA that seeks such advance notice. So because of all of that, I cannot support this. I'll be voting to not to accept these funds. And I hear what you're saying, Commissioner Urban, about picking a fight with the DOJ. I don't know that I consider this picking a fight with the DOJ, although, you know, I imagine there will come a time when, you know, folks like me will likely have to do so, which makes it a really scary time to be an activist. All that aside, it is us simply saying that, you know, we're going to have to go without these funds until we can get them elsewhere, because we refuse to be compliant with these requirements. I'm not comfortable authorizing this, especially given the fact that, and I want to be clear, I trust you all to share the certification, the affidavit that has to be signed with us so we can look at it. But at that point, it will be too late for us to say, no, we can't move this forward, because it'll no longer be in our hands. We will have already accepted and approved the moving forward of this grant. Finally, I just want to remind us that shortly after the election in 2016, when many of us were reeling, there's a lot going on, a lot of conversation about what it's going to look like in these new times under this administration. We had conversations about the fact that we were likely going to have to, at some point, start considering you know, how to handle funding that we receive from the federal government, understanding that there's a good chance that we could, you know, that funding could be withheld from us, and that was a dangerous, scary place to get, but it is, you know, it was a reality we knew may be coming. And so I guess my feeling is, you know, for me, at this point, that reality has come. My understanding from county's corporate counsel is that this is a new shift this year. I do know that the city of Chicago is suing the DOJ for not allowing the funding in spite of the fact that they haven't complied. I believe the original lawsuit was on behalf of all municipalities. However, the judge has separated it out, and it's only on behalf of Chicago. So I don't know if we want to follow that case. I don't know if there's a situation where we want to bring a case. I don't know what that looks like. I know there are municipalities trying to fight it. But if that's the case, then I feel like we need to know the answer to that before we accept these funds. Yeah, I'll shut up now. So I can't support it until we figure out, you know, what our legal options are, if we can, you know, decline to follow those particular conditions, and then, you know, file a lawsuit. I don't know. To me, Commissioner Urban, that would be actually picking a fight as opposed to just turning down the funds. So that's where I'm at. I likely have forgot something really important that I wanted to say, but I've talked enough. I'll have to vote no on this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Cooney, I thought I saw you.
Okay, yeah. Well, I can't vote for this tonight, but I would this is an important grant to this public safety department. So I would request that we do call a special meeting that give me time to study a little bit more about this whole thing so that I can make a more intelligent decision on it. I cannot support it tonight.
So before you speak, Commissioner, for the body, we need 4 affirmative votes. And so there's 5 of us sitting here. 2 have already stated they're not going to support it. So there aren't enough votes to pass it, no matter what's said, unless you can convince one of the members. I would recommend that we withdraw the motion and allow the city attorney to do more research. I call it special, and let that sort of guide whatever happens next. It also allows your other 2 colleagues to be here if they would like. That's my recommendation, because either way, it's not going to pass this evening. Commissioner.
I object to that non-pleasing. One, not everybody has spoken completely on the topic before on the vote, and so I respectfully ask to be heard before we vote or decide to table the matter. It may be prudent under the circumstances to table the motion, but I want to have a chance to speak here.
Yeah, Commissioner, let me respond to that. So typically I allow everyone to speak, and everyone did get to speak except for me. I was the only one that didn't get to speak. And so I was just stating the facts of, I wasn't going to dive into all the details because I don't have that, but the realities are there are not enough votes to pass this evening. There just aren't as it stands. We have individuals asking for more information. We've had one individual that has said they have enough information and this is not going to work for them. So all I'm saying tonight, there aren't enough to do this. You have to have 4, no matter, even though 3 is the majority tonight, you have to have 4.
I don't think your mic is on. I'm sorry, that's what I was waiting.
May I speak?
Yep.
Well, I would like to think that I could be perhaps persuasive enough to get one of my colleagues to change their mind. And you presume that I wouldn't have that amount of persuasive power. And that's what I was objecting to. That's kind of a fine point. I'm a little hyper-vigilant right now because I think that I'm not sure we'll learn that much more that's really going to be crystal clear about what we should do in the next 2 weeks. I think we'll be facing the same dilemma in the next 2 weeks that we face right now, except possibly 2 other commissioners will have an opinion, and then we'll decide, and we'll live with that decision. And that's fine. That's how democracy works. But I find it somewhat ironic that we're worried about federal funds being withheld from us eventually, whereas we're just about, in the direction we were heading, to withhold federal funds from ourselves by refusing to accept this grant on a matter that doesn't directly deal with actual human rights. It deals with providing our police department with the tools they need to do criminal investigation work in a timely way. So somebody in the press could say, well, you know what? Somebody in Facebook could say, well, the city, in its great zeal to be out front on this very key human rights issue, also is allowing some criminals to run free for a little longer before they can come to trial because of delays in gathering the evidence that would perhaps convict them. I mean, somebody could say that. I mean, that's what Facebook does these days. Stuff can get really distorted, and then we have to deal with that. So I'm cautioning us to take a deep breath and to say, let's do something that is meaningful. Let's do something that we can stand behind. But we don't have to just jump on a perceived, well, of course, the perception is in the eye of the perceiver, you know? And so there you have me, you know? Some people perceive this as a much bigger threat than perhaps I do. And that's why we have a democracy, is we'll review on that. But my, I guess, advice is that we just take a deep breath and consider all the implications that we can imagine of what our decision would be, and reserve to ourselves the realization that further actions will be required of us when circumstances present themselves. So, having said that, I'm more than content to go ahead and have the issue tabled for this evening.
Mr. Manager.
Yeah, I just want to note, looking at the language of the special conditions, there is for 44, 45, and 46 special conditions, there is a scope paragraph, and it says this condition applies with respect to the program or activity that is funded in whole or part by the award as of the date the recipient accepts the award and throughout the remainder of the period of performance. So in this case, we're buying a gas spectrometer and video equipment. We're not funding a program per se. So I would suggest, as it appears the language says, that you know, it's only limited to the scope of how these funds are being used that are awarded, not the city in general in our operations.
Thank you. Commissioner Urban, were you the one that made the motion?
Yes.
So you had talked about tabling, which we can't table because that would be later in the meeting. We can postpone or you can, Clyde hates it when I do this, but if you're recommending a withdrawal of your motion, which that's what I took your table to be, but your intent, but I don't. Microphone.
We will have a special meeting, and that we would make every effort to have all commissioners present, and we would make a determination in time to either accept the grant or not before the deadline. Without understanding how you was to withdraw the motion, and of course that depends on the second deadline.
Mr. Anderson.
Are you asking whether I'd be willing to withdraw my support?
I'm accepting that as a withdrawal. Are you so in support of the withdrawal with the same stipulation?
Yes.
Okay. Motion has been withdrawn. Commissioner Sykes.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate, City Manager, you reading that section. I just, you know, I want to offer a couple of points for consideration as we think about how we move forward, whether that's in a special meeting or whatnot. And maybe this, by making this statement, City Attorney Robinson, you can double check this, but for me, when it says the condition applies with respect to the quote program or activity that is funded in whole or in part by the award, I mean, my argument would then be, for instance, if we're talking about video cameras for the purpose of interrogation in a room, if we find out during that interrogation, and that was funded in part by this grant, then are we required to let folks know that this person is undocumented? I am not comfortable taking that chance. And I hear, you know, I'm not ready to see this as big a deal as other folks, but like, we're talking about actual people's lives on the line. You know, we have deported a good number of people who went to their home country and were immediately killed, either by the state or by criminal entities. People go home and die. People go home and their loved ones never see them again. Children never find their parents again. We've got concentration camps. I cannot state this emphatically enough. We have concentration camps in our country right now. And children are suffering physical abuse, sexual abuse. There are children who will never see their parents again. There are parents who lost the right to their children simply from crossing the border, even though they found their children. But they no longer have legal rights to their child. This is not something that we can play with. I would argue that when our country has concentration camps, and we are looking at a document and we're splitting hairs about, well, could this mean it's dangerous? Well, could it mean it's not? We err on the side of caution. There are people who live in this community who commit to this community and work for this community and make this community a better place every day. Some of them we know personally, who could lose their lives if we get this wrong. And you know, with all due respect, you know, I hear you, Commissioner Urban, when you say, you know, the perception is in the eye of the perceiver, but let's be really clear. I am not one individual perceiving these things, right? We have had multiple municipalities in this country perceive the same thing. Attorneys perceive the same thing as they file lawsuits. Even our Kalamazoo County Corporate Council perceives it the same way. We have colleagues over there on the commission and a county sheriff's office using funds like these to justify not having a real policy that protects undocumented immigrants because, you know, financially we're required by law because of this grant. I will never be okay with being complicit in that. You know, Commissioner Cooney, you asked the question about the sheriff's policies. I can tell you, as of right now, the sheriff's policies are to notify ICE and give them 48 hours to come pick up somebody before they let them go. We had a family lose a grandmother that way for alleged shoplifting. Like small, petty, like alleged shoplifting, and she's gone. Who knows when her family sees her again? We have an individual, I got up in the middle of the night and rescued a young mom in her early 20s with 2 children from her home because of a domestic violence dispute. Now, this woman had already gone to the YWCA for counseling. She had an attorney. The attorney told her, listen, we can talk to the prosecutor, we can talk to the sheriff, because this is a domestic violence case. We don't pursue undocumented individuals in cases of domestic violence. Well, she went to them, and ICE was notified. And she was picked up, and now she wears a tether in this community while she goes through ICE proceedings. I had a conversation with her in my living room about what was gonna happen to her children if she left. She didn't want to take her children with her because the Kalamazoo promise. But she was gonna have to go back to Mexico. Small children, very small children, adorable children. I had to get up, I got up at 1:30 a.m. Chief Thomas can attest to this because I called her and left her a voicemail before I left my home. This woman had been beaten, threatened with a gun that very evening by her estranged partner, who was the one she went to the YWCA about before, and now she had a tether on. She called, she was on the phone, crying, sobbing, yelling, but not willing to leave her house because she had that ice tether on. She was locked herself and her kids in a bedroom, and I had to go stand in her living room and convince her that she could leave her home with that tether around her ankle to keep from being shot by her partner, who had just left and made it very clear that he was coming back to kill her. That's what we're talking about here. These are the people we're talking about here. So if we're not sure, then oh, I almost cursed. Forget that. Right? Because we stand, this commission, you know, we disagree on a lot of things. We do. But this is one that we were able to say, from the very beginning, there wasn't even that much discussion. It was, well, this just happened. Yes, we will stand strong, and we will stand strong together on the behalf of our people, even if that means we're going to have to make tough decisions regarding funding from the state moving forward. I would submit to you all that this is that important point where we have to stand firm and say, no. And that's it.
Commissioners, one, I guess, if the attorney comes back and says that this is in violation of our action, then my question would be, why would we be having a meeting? There would be no need to call a special. So I guess that's the realm I'm in. Go back, it sounds like there's so many other unanswered questions, such as what happens to the signer? Minor points, because families are dealing with this, but I know I'm going to get a text from my mother or something and asking me, so does this mean you yeah. So I would certainly hope that you can get back information to us through a memo saying that it does or does not, and if you say it does not, then I think then we call a special and we have that discussion. Right. If you, from a legal standpoint, saying, well, you know, A, B, C, D, E, then I don't see a need for a special. That's just where I'm. That's good. Commissioner.
Well, it seems to me that in future, when we want to ask a question of the attorney, we'd better give the attorney the full statement of the questions, and so that we can deal with this in a timely manner. So we're all learning. You know, really, this is a new era since the Trump administration. We are having to do things we never thought we'd ever have to do in this country and in the city commission already. But I think we're learning, and we're going to continue to learn. And it is, if we do have a special meeting, if it is warranted, we're going to have a discussion of all 7 of us here, and we're going to end up making a decision for the whole community from the 7 of us, and we'll live with that. But the discussion can be enriched by a vigorous debate, and we're seeing that. And the spirit of the debate can be elevated, or it can be pretty unelevated. I'm hoping that we can continue to have it at a high non-personal level, at a level that we have to realize that emotions drive action. So emotions are okay. Emotions allow us to express ourselves forcefully. But reason, I'm coming to realize, as a former scientist, that a reason is a necessary part of our consideration, as well as emotion. We have to consider the bigger statistical picture as well as the individual personal picture. And in the course of our discussion, I trust that will happen. I'm confident that we'll all learn from this. So I'm okay with it.
Good. Thank you. Item, Mr. Attorney?
I would only mention this. I guess I'm trying to get a read on where the commission wants to go with that. Because at the end of the day, those certifications are the key. They have to be signed by myself and the mayor. They say that you sign them under the penalty of perjury, and perjury is a felony, and if I was to be convicted, I'd lose my law license. So if I'm looking for self-preservation, I'm going to tell you to punt. Why even walk on that thin ice if I don't have to?
Mm-hmm.
But if the commission says, you know, this is something, we need the $92,000, it's an important aspect to the operation of our public safety department, okay, I'll take that into account as well and take a look at, okay, do the 2 hours of research necessary to tease out all the questions that have been raised this evening and look at every statute that's cited in the agreement. And I'm willing to do that. But it would be good to know a little bit of the direction of the commission, where it wants to go with this. How badly do you, I guess the question is, how badly do you want this? I'm willing to do the work, because I'm not trying to get out of anything, but the issue is, do I really want to do all that work only to this thing to be voted down 4-3? I don't necessarily need an answer tonight, but just food for thought.
Mr. Anderson.
No, so from my perspective, going through the language, some of the language is kind of boilerplate grant language, familiar language, some of the stuff that's, I don't know if generic's the right word, boilerplate anyway. Some of the descriptions may be something that happens anyway. I mean, that is an activity that occurs that we have no control over whatsoever, signing this grant or not. And then after those two categories, I guess there's a third category which attempts to intuit, you know, the nuance of the language and parse it to a level that provides some comfort to the concerns. And that seems like that is the most, I mean, that is the deeper of the three categories, I would suggest, relative to that. So I understand your concern, you know, kind of saying, is that even possible? Is it worth the effort to nuance that? And I mean, I guess I would hope it would be, but I get your concern about that. So I'm not sure if I can give you any better answer from my perspective about it than that.
And I guess here's where the nuances come. You can read the grant conditions and, okay, what does that mean? I can look up all the statutes. But the commission says, in the resolution that was adopted in July, it is, you prohibit any resources or funds, including staff time, to be used to, one, separate children from their families. Okay. At what point does that occur? I mean, is it an active, because we do this, children are automatically separated, or because we do this, 3 steps down the way, there may be a separation of children? Where does that line get drawn? And one almost have to has a crystal ball in order to figure out whether the action of disclosing information to the federal authorities would necessarily lead to children getting separated. I don't know that you can make that decision at that particular moment. Number 2, to assist other governmental agencies in separating children from their families. Well, again, is merely sharing information and assistance as what was intended by the commission? And finally, to otherwise detain any individual based solely on their immigration status. Of all the 3, that's probably the easiest one, because it says solely on immigration status. You can detain people if they violated the law otherwise, but you can't arrest them because of their immigration status. And as a matter of fact, KDPS has had a long policy of not detaining anybody on the basis of immigration status. That has been their policy for at least since I've been here and before that. So I would say for at least 15 years, That's always been their policy. They don't detain on the basis of immigration status. So that's the easy one. The other one is, okay, is what you do here, this one action, going to lead to the separation of children from their families? The other thing, and then there was some discussion as to giving information to ICE or the Naturalization Service. And this is, one of the statutes that's cited is a statute that was adopted in 1996. Hasn't changed, hasn't been amended. This is nothing new. It wasn't adopted in the last 2 years. It was adopted during the Clinton administration. And it says that notwithstanding any other provision of federal, state, or local law, no person or agency may prohibit or in other way restrict a federal, state, or local government entity from doing any of the following with respect to information regarding immigration status, lawful or unlawful, sending information or requesting or receiving information from Immigration and Naturalization Service. So what you're suggesting is the resolution that you adopted, you intended to say, we're going to violate this section of federal law that's been the law for 20 years? I don't think you meant that. I don't think that you meant to adopt an unlawful position regarding federal law. But if that's what you're saying, you want to draw that line in the sand, let me know. Because I didn't perceive that resolution as saying we're going to violate this section of law that's been in existence for 22 years. I'm just trying to get an idea as to where you're coming from.
Would you mind reading that section?
Answer your questions.
Would you mind rereading that section of federal law for me?
Sure.
Thank you.
It is, notwithstanding any other provision of federal, state, or local law, no person or agency may prohibit or in any way restrict a federal, state, or local government entity from doing any of the following with respect to information regarding the immigration status, lawful or unlawful, of any individual. And there's three things. Number one, sending information to or requesting or receiving information from Immigration and Naturalization Service. 2, maintaining such information. 3, exchanging such information with any federal, state, or local governmental entity.
Commissioner Urban, I saw your hand. And then, okay. Commissioner Cooney.
So I have three things. One, my bottom line is I am not interested in cooperating in any action which leads to the deportation of innocent people from our community. That's number one. So that's one. Number two, why should this be required of us to receive funds that are going to be used for public safety in our community? These are tax dollars which our people have paid. They owe that to our community. And I think we have to make a statement to the federal government and say we do not accept these conditions to be required of us to receive the money which our people deserve. They're my 2 points.
Commissioner Sykes.
I absolutely agree. I thank you, Commissioner Cooney, for saying it. I feel the same way. Happy to say, let's notify the DOJ that we, expect to receive these funds, and in spite of the fact that we do not intend to be complicit. I guess I have a question about, federal law saying we cannot restrict information sharing back and forth. Does that render our policy with KDPS against federal law? Because my understanding is we have a policy not to notify the federal government unless necessary. I don't know. I guess maybe I don't understand. It's been a long time since we talked about this. Because if we have a policy not to necessarily, the federal government, when we have, my understanding about detain is You know, there was a time when young men were detained on their front porch just because, you know, the officers had asked them not to leave yet. I mean, my understanding is our policy is that we don't notify unless, you know, an actual crime has been committed. And when Chief Hadley, you know, explained the policy to us, it was also my understanding that we also weren't going to be notifying them if, for instance, it was a traffic violation. You know, I think he even referred to drunk driving. He specifically said if we would notify, it'd be about like severe cases, murder, rape, you know, violent assaults, those sorts of things. Yeah, so I guess I'm just really confused, and I know that the law is not, you know,
well, it's
yeah.
not as straight. I don't think that we notify. I would defer to the chief, and again, I don't have the policy in front of me, but I don't think they're actively notifying. However, ICE has its way of finding out. I'm aware of a young woman. Apparently, she came to this country at a young age. She even got a graduated from WMU. She's in her mid-20s. She got a drunk driving conviction, and she came and said, "What can I do to get this erased from my record, because immigration naturalization is looking to kick me out of the country I've only known for all my childhood and adult life."
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's nothing I could do because the 5 years hadn't passed from the date of conviction. So there's nothing I could do about that. And I said, I can write a letter on behalf of you to the federal authority saying other than this one offense, I'm not aware of any other problems you've had in Kalamazoo. But they found that out. They've got the list of people who've got to regularly renew their permission to be in this country, and they cross-referenced it with convictions. Yeah. And it came up. Now, the city didn't do anything, but it was the city's process, and that caught the woman up in the net. Yeah. And so that stuff follows and happens. And the question then becomes, okay, what is the position of the city in regard to that? I mean, I tried to do what I could, but again, there's not much I could do.
Yeah. I guess I implore us all to, you know, keep in mind the current climate we live in. I also, you know, with our current president and administration talking about things like removing citizenship. There are people who have been legal citizens who have now been subject to deportation. And I don't believe, you know, he can, because constitutional law, I don't believe allows it, or constitutional law, I don't believe allows it. But we also have an administration talking about striking down birthright status, meaning people who were born in Bronson Hospital, for instance, to undocumented parents. I have no desire to break federal law, ever. I am not, you're only gonna catch me breaking the law if it's in nonviolent civil disobedience, period. But I also recognize that sometimes nonviolent civil disobedience is required, and as we get deeper and deeper into this system of things that seeks to lock up innocent families, separate innocent families, there is going to possibly come a time when, you know, we as a body are going to have to consider whether or not we are willing to act in nonviolent civil disobedience. I know that we take an oath to uphold the law. When I consider that oath, what I'm not willing to do is uphold laws that are not constitutional. really tricky. I know that also gets us, I mean, that's a scary thing to think about. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people in danger right now, and I just, my hope is that we as a body will continue to stand strong even as it gets a little bit more uncomfortable and maybe even dangerous moving forward. We either, you know, we stand strong where we are or we don't, but it's, I don't know, it's something worth thinking about in our alone time as individuals, you know, when we're up at night staring at the ceiling. Yeah.
Okay. G1, Mr. Manager.
Adoption of a resolution creating the Northside Cultural Business District Authority.
Anyone wanting to speak on this item, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city.
Your Honor, we have Christina Anderson and Maddie Jordan Woods want to do a brief presentation on this.
Good evening.
So, thank you for allowing us. We are so excited to having this come to a conclusion after many, many months of notice and meetings and yeah. So I don't think that we need to belabor it completely with the full presentation. You have seen it before. What we'll do briefly is, what I would like Maddie to do is talk just a little bit about the neighborhood plan and why we're here and what the intent of the authority is. And then we can answer any questions you have about Corridor Improvement Authority, boundary, and any of those type of details, and next steps.
So I'm going to try and be brief. I was told from the back that I better be brief because we have been here. And so as most of you know, that our community has been planning since 2005. And no matter when we did the meetings, the same things would come up. We just didn't have the dollars to do it or the tools to be able to do it. When the Imagine Kalamazoo came into existence, it said this was an opportunity, that some of the things that you had been trying to get through, you would be available and tools to be able to make that happen. You have to go through the process almost again. And our community did that, and one of the things that came out of it was to create the Northside Cultural Business District, to use the tool of financing and capturing dollars to, one, create financial incentives to increase the number of resident-owned businesses in the Northside neighborhood, especially those by African Americans and low-income residents. Increase the amount of affordable housing available based on income levels in the city of Kalamazoo. Build the cultural identity of the neighborhood with the new logo, murals, art installations, and preserving culturally significant places, and improving facades, infrastructure, sidewalks, streetscapes in the district. And use the neighborhood enterprise zone to support the building and rehabilitation of affordable home ownership. The neighborhood enterprise zone is not part of this. At this time, it's another tool. We are asking for the creation of the authority. You guys accepted our plan, and now we are asking for you to accept the designation of this tool for us to move forward to increase the number of businesses in our community and have a visual effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Clear.
Commissioner Anderson.
I appreciate it, and we have been through this before, and I appreciate you reminding us of that, of what we've seen. So tonight, the motion will be to adopt the resolution. Is there a time frame over which various things will occur relative to this motion being adopted?
So once the authority, thank you, Maddie, once the authority's in place, the next steps are to select members for the board. The board will then need bylaws, and then once that is in place, start to look at what activities they would like to do first. And so you know Quarter Improvement Authority has the ability to do a TIF plan, a tax increment finance plan. It has the ability to plan, do marketing, do branding. There's lots of things that the authority can start to do. But you know, the next step is to select those board members with the mayor and the commission in conjunction with Maddie and the Northside Association for Community Development. Get the bylaws, get them all set, have them confirm what their next steps are, and then they'll go through and start to do those plans.
So, you know, I like to fast forward. So I would like to have all of that in place by February. So if you ask me, tonight would be the first step. If you all approve of this tonight, there has been people who have been part of my neighborhood, the Imagine Kalamazoo meetings that live within the district. It was real clear that there was a 7-member board. We're going to contact, well, they've been contacting us saying this big gap is going on. And we will then contact them. The city of Kalamazoo is going to put together an application, and we will get it to them, and then we will get it to the mayor. We will hope that the mayor does not take a long time to make his selections. And from there, then that group will be brought together. They'll have the meetings at NACD, and we will move forward. So, Commissioner Anderson, if you ask me, I'm on a fast forward of February. So that's my timeline. I don't always get what I want, but I try.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, is there a TIF activity is tied to this area? Is that accurate? Or is it not entirely contiguous with this particular area? Just a
Are you
reminder on
referring to DEGA, the Downtown Economic Growth Authority? So right now, what we're doing tonight is setting the authority.
I'm talking about DEGA, right?
Right. This authority, which is would exist directly north of DEGA, has the ability to create a TIF plan. It does not currently exist. This board, the board that is created for the authority, will bring that to you. So once the board is created by February, we'll be back with that next step.
Okay, so that was part of my question on the next steps. Do all those, then come back with the TIF plan.
Correct,
right?
because this board also needs to review and approve that piece.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone wanting to speak on this item, please step forward. You have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city.
I know I've been up here once. I'm going to do this again because I speak for everybody. I'm Rhonda again. I really like that idea because most of y'all know I'm an entrepreneur. And cleaners are in demand. You got all these houses that's empty. And I agree, you should let Maddie have that. I've talking to Maddie previously about, and I've worked for Maddie. I've done her home.
Ma'am, I'm going to have you speak to us, and if you let go of the microphone, it's going to...
Okay, I've even provided my entrepreneur services in Maddie's home, and I'm dynamic. You know, I love dirt. I love tackling dirt. And this is a good cause because I've been, like I said, Doc Cooney know me. Hey, I mean, I could be a supervisor lead. I mean, this is a good thing, and I really, really want y'all to get that to Maddie because, like I said, I've talked to Maddie about this before with my business, and man, I'm dynamic when it comes to cleaning dirt. Cleaning is in a big demand. I mean, y'all can even make an appointment with me when I get better. I'll clean your house. You gonna like me. I'll make it shine. Hey, I mean, I didn't go to school very much, but hey, it's in need in the black community. I mean, y'all just talked about that. Hey, get communities together, man. I mean, that's been a need for a long time, and I'm proud of Maddie Jordan, man. She's been there for me, you know, trying to get me. I think I graduated from a class, Northside Ecopanamo Group. when it was here over here on Rose Street. I graduated from that class. And then I had my business set up at the Douglas. And I'm now legit. I'm now legit. Got my DBA over there in the city. Hey, it's awesome. I learned from every last one of y'all, man. I mean, sometimes, God, but y'all got positions. And y'all see me come up here, I don't know how many times, but hey, it's awesome change, man. We got to teach everybody to be a community, man, a village. And I want to say this, and I don't want to get point. I kind of agree with Mr. Cooney and Shannon, man. I mean, I was sitting here talking, I know it's not really good talk, but when I see police cars, it say protect and serve. They do it the other way backwards. They serve the ones that's getting hit and beat up and protect the criminals that really need to be served into jail. It's kind of backwards to me. Because I've been in domestic violence situations where, you know, over and over and over and over and over, and every time I try to file a complaint or get a thing against the one that hit me, it always seems like they always serving the ones that's the criminals. They not serving the ones that get beat up. We the one that goes through the hell. You know, so it's like, why do y'all put that on y'all police cars when you say serve and protect? Y'all protecting the wrong ones. Y'all need to serve the ones like Shannon said when that lady got beat up. And the wrong ones are getting, I don't know, it's crazy. It's crazy, but I support Maddie in that. And y'all need to let them have it, because like I said, she been working with me being an entrepreneur, and I'm dynamic at cleaning. I just told Shannon I want to make an appointment with her. Give me a chance. I only charge $7 an hour. I only charge $7 an hour. I leave it to the discretion of who I clean for. I'm pretty good. I've been owning my business since 2001. But because I know how to help that Maddie's doing, man, you'd be surprised how we clean up Kalamazoo. That's all I got.
Thank you. Next, please.
Yes, good evening. My name is Noah Curzan. I'm a resident of the north side on North Rose Street. Just want to speak in support of the resolution in front of you tonight. I've been a resident there for the past 7 years. I was able to afford to purchase my first home there due to a partnership between Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services, the Land Bank, and some other local organizations. You may remember that program from years ago. You know, hearing the plans put forward with the new cultural business district is just exciting to think about what other opportunities in relation to business development and affordable housing development and things. So from a personal perspective as a resident of the neighborhood, I definitely support Maddie's proposals and hope that you all do as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak on this? Please, young lady.
Hello, Commission. My name is Gwendolyn Hooker. I am a North Side resident. I am a business owner on the North Side, and I live in the, actually my business is going to be situated in the North Side Cultural Business District. I'm coming here today to strongly encourage and implore you folks to accept the resolution for the Northside Cultural Business District Authority, because not only will it allow myself to be able to continue in pursuit of my project, but it will also allow many of my other friends that are from the North Side who have went through the My Neighborhood program, who have went through many of the North Side business courses, to actually start implementing all of the things that we've learned by providing housing and creating economic development in the North Side. We know that there's obviously a major problem with housing, but there's also a problem with affordable housing, specifically on the North Side, and this is one of the tools that would definitely be able to allow North Side residents and business owners to be able to provide economic development in our very own neighborhood by allowing residents to own their own housing as well as to create and start their own small businesses. As far as the Northside Cultural Business District and my neighborhood, you know, the work that Maddie and the Northside Association for Community Development does is indisputable. We all know some of the work that she does. Most of the work that she does is geared towards residents and improving housing, creating equity, building economic development. And this is one of those ways that's going to really put a lot of the vision and dream that we have for the North Side into action, where it's actually going to directly improve the quality of life for the North Side residents overall and create economic development for the city of Kalamazoo. So I would strongly recommend you accepting the resolution, which will allow my project and many other projects that are like mine to go forward. Thank you so much. You guys have a great evening. Don't forget to vote tomorrow.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to speak on this item? Seeing no one, Commissioners requested action as a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Sykes, supported by Commissioner Urban. We are in discussion. Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney?
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell?
Yes. Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Mr. Manager, G2, please.
Adoption of a resolution approving the administrative settlement agreement in order of consent with the United States Environmental Protection Agency, Region 5, in the United States Department of Justice regarding that portion of the Allied Paper, Portage Creek, Kalamazoo River Superfund site located in the city, and authorize the city manager or his designee to sign the agreement and any further documents associated with the agreement and the city's responsibilities under it. Yeah.
Anyone in the audience wanting to comment on this item, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Hani. I'm from Egypt, so please excuse my English. My kids, Yassine and Nadine, they have a high concern about homeless. Actually, they like to call, they don't like this word, they prefer to say hopeful people.
Sir, this item is about the landfill. Citizens' comments coming up, though.
Okay, so we...
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll signal you when it's time.
Okay.
Okay.
Seeing no one else, Commissioners requested actions, a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion?
I move that.
Moved by Commissioner Anderson, supported by Commissioner Urban. Discussion? Commissioner Cooney.
So I just want to thank Bruce Merchant for all the great work that he's done in this area for so many years. And we didn't get everything we wanted out of this, but I think we got the best that we could, and I really appreciate the great work that Bruce has done.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson.
Dittos on that. I don't want to ask a long, complicated question here, but this process has been so long and so convoluted, and we've had the opportunity to learn so many new acronyms and forget just as many acronyms. But through all this and all the good work, can someone just tell me in a nutshell, what does this mean exactly for us here now? I mean, is this going to be indicative of any particular progress?
Right. Is anything going to happen?
Is there an answer, easy answer for that?
City Attorney.
The quick, easy answer is that the city has had its eye on the Panelite site, which is adjacent to the Allied site, but the Panelite site is not part of the Superfund project. There is a portion that the EPA will be cleaning up on the Panelite, because there is some debris and contamination that went on the Panelite site, but they said Panelite site's not part of the operating unit 1. The city said we want to consider the Allied site and the Panelite site as a whole, but the only way this, and they would like to use, the EPA would like to use the Panelite site for various purposes. We said we're willing to acquire it through our Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. However, we know that there's some bad stuff on that. We want to be held harmless for any pollution that you might find on that parcel. And so through negotiations with the EPA and the department, and through the EPA with the Department of Justice, this is really what this agreement does, is that it gives us kind of a covenant not to sue us based upon any condition on the Pantelite site. If we acquire it, that we won't be considered a responsible polluting, a potentially responsible party for any pollution on that site. That's it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Mr. Urban?
Well, I see another appeal to this, I guess, advantage to proceeding with this. If I'm wrong about this, I hope that Mr. Merchant, who is in the audience, or the city attorney can correct me. But it seems to me that by acquiring the Pantelite site, we really have a chance now to have the EPA look at the entire developable section of the property between Alcott and Cork. And now it's going to be developed in a consistent, coherent way, because it's all connected now. So that's a win for the city and a win for the EPA as well, because it simplifies their design work, and also the construction work, because now they have more land to work with if they want to stage things in certain areas and then move them back into another area in the course of building this taller pile that they're going to build. So I think we were all hoping that we wouldn't go into a long explanation of how wonderful this is and all the things it means, because we've heard it a lot before. But on the other hand, people need to realize that a lot of people who worked on this for a long time, and we never thought it was going to be possible when we first started. I mean, when the EPA first proposed to use the Allied site as a dumping ground for waste in Plainwell, that was the thing that kicked all this off. And so here we are 5 or 6 or 10 years later practically now. This is about probably more than 10 years now. We're at a point where we really have moved the ball in a direction that no one would have thought possible. And it's taken a lot of work from a lot of people. I'm thrilled to be able to support this motion to resolve, to make this resolution.
Other comments? Clerk Whirling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Cooney?
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes? Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes. Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Mr. Manager, you have a report this evening?
None, Your Honor.
Mr. Attorney?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to note that tomorrow is Election Day, and invite everyone who's a registered voter to come out to vote. Polls will be open at 7 a.m. and they'll close at 8 p.m. If you still have an absentee ballot out, that voted ballot needs to be back to your local clerk by 8 p.m. tomorrow. So please return that. We want to count them. And that's it. Please vote.
Thank you. We are now at citizens' comment. Any citizen wanting to comment on anything this evening, please step forward. You have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Actually, sir, I'm going to let the family go up first since they attempted earlier. Thank you.
And they've got kids in school, probably.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Hani again. My kids have an idea about hopeful people. We are looking for your help to make this project a reality. My son Yasin, he has a presentation. We would love if you allowed him to tell you about the idea.
Hello, my name is Yasin. So basically our idea is we want to help those who want a second chance at life or who have failed once and have learned how to be better. So we are trying to make temporary homes for people. So we get a lot and we build houses, small homes on them for people. And then people, they have a place to live because here we all know winter in Michigan is very bad. And all these people suffer out in the streets. So we want to make a safe place for them to sit and feel safe while they have time to go and get a job. So then they're not under pressure or suffering while they do it. So, I'm sorry. So this is a nonprofit organization. We do it out of our hearts to help people. We don't want to make money out of this. It's for the people. What we get is happiness from seeing them progress through life and get better. Like, I don't want to go into much detail about it, but we have like a time limit, and then there would be a fee after they spend all their time here, so they get a certain amount of time in the homes, because we don't want people just sitting there and doing nothing. We mainly want to help college students or single parents with students that go to school, and we want to help them specifically, so then their kids can go to school and the college students can actually go to college without having to suffer.
We can afford some portion of money from our pocket, from our wallet, and we are looking to contact a tiny home manufacturer to build about 5 to 10 very tiny home, 200 square feet, just to protect the hopeful people from a hard winter. We are coming here to ask you if you allowed us to get a vacant lot somewhere for free, and we can go pay some money from our wallet, as I said, go fund me to make it a reality. And we need just, we can also, I can make some management and volunteer my time to manage this issue. We just asking the authority here to screening the people, because we don't want to go in a problem with some criminal background or something like that. We cannot deal with this. We need a lot. We need some help in screening the people, and we can manage everything. We can start with 5 tiny houses. We can pay a good portion of this money. After that, we can expend it. But we know well that we cannot go and buy a lot anywhere and do any project without authorization. So we're asking you if you agree to give us this lot. So next step, we will contact the manufacturer and give you a full details about this.
Thank you. Good evening.
My name's Alan Loveridge, and I don't live in the city of Kalamazoo. I asked the city of Portage to fund the Ticket to Success program, where homeless people that got jobs far away could get free bus rides, as well as go south for a winter bus ride, you know, rather than stay here for the winter. There is a way to cost. Also, I want to say there is a way to cut the cost of prison life in half and increase the quality of life for people in the prison. I call it camp-style prison, where small housing units that could be built for around 20,000 on a 50 by 50 lot, and the prisoners would wear ankle monitors that would keep track of their positions, and the rule would be stay 10 feet away from other prisoners. This would end prisoner-to-prisoner violence, and you cannot enter another prisoner's space without taking a chance on losing camp-style prison. The housing units would have air conditioning, electric, heat, shower, learning computer with games, so you could protect yourself from associating with other prisoners. Only those that were low risk and not likely to try to escape would get this type of prison, and be a incentive to plea deal as well. I would also like to find a $4 job for many prisoners. It could be something as simple as sorting, recycling, taking all the staples and tape off. This would be $8,000, at least $2,000 available for child support, and $4,000 for artificial Social Security history. I have improved one of my ideas for helping homeless, and I point out that we could end the homeless problem in 1 year with the basic needs unit that costs about $5,000 a piece. If half the units were rented out for $250 a month, it would be enough to, you know, money that you pay for the whole thing, and you could let the other half go for free. You know, because basically half the homeless, you know, do have jobs. Under this plan, it would not cost the government anything really, because you're just being the co-signer, and that's the federal government I'm asking to take on this project. And what I really want from the city of Kalamazoo is help win a meeting with somebody from Congress. So, I'd like to have one-on-one with them, whether it's before or after one of your meetings or something like that. I really like, I have tons of ideas. I mean, you've only seen the tip of the iceberg. Anyway, I do have one idea you can pass on to your school board to help with the substitute teacher problem. You could ask them to encourage the book manufacturers to develop an online lecture series for each book. The substitute teachers could use them, so they could stay on track, and absent students could use them, and regular teachers could use them to help prepare their lectures and lower the work burden on them. And it really wouldn't cost very much to have a lecture series. If you had a book you're using the whole year, you have a 180, little miniature series, because the teachers present all that information to the students anyway, and they can kind of follow along with these. I know a lot of them are going to take their own take on it and, come up with their own version, but, somebody had to come in, because they're gone for 2 weeks. They could just kind of pick up right up, on the lecture series and follow the book from that point on. So, and it would lower the cost. You could actually use that to lower the cost of college education by having a lecture series for the, the college books as well. But I guess that's it for now.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. The reason I'm here tonight is I live on James Street, and I want to thank you for replacing the lead pipes.
Could we have your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, Ed Tarkowski. And my house is located 1116 James. I'm just south of Lake Street. And dealing with the excavator there, SWT Excavation, I think their people are very competent. They're very efficient. They do a good job. The contracting guys, concrete guys, M&K, Mark is excellent, and the engineer. I wanted to say that because you might not be aware of it, but they're very efficient. And I've been a contractor for 35 years, and I've kind of studied individuals, and these guys are very good. You've got a good crew, please don't lose them. One issue I have is I had a tree cut down a couple of months ago, about a month and a half ago, and I talked with my friend who's now deceased, Todd Pryor. 2 days prior to his death, we discussed the tree. It only took me 3 years to get it cut down, so I thought that was a good win for me. But talking with Todd at the time, I asked him if they'd remove the stump, and he absolutely said yes, no problem, that's part of what we do. Well, the job's half done. Tree's gone, stump's still there. Today I took a quick cruise of the neighborhood, and I stopped counting at 12 stumps, okay? If we can't get it done through the city, get it subcontracted. I talked to Todd's partner, Sean Root. He informed me that it costs about $200 to remove my big maple stump. So I thought, well, I was told through the city, that particular office, that when I called and asked about stump removal, they said, well, they did it when they had time to do it. Well, apparently they never have time, because some of the stumps I've seen are still there, ant infested, typical things. So please, let's get it done while we're working on the street, because if that gets done, the next crew that comes in will do a good job with landscaping, because they're going to add top dirt, they're going to, put the seed in everything. It's going to look great. Okay? Next thing is the homelessness in the city. I feel for these people. Sisters of St. Joseph are getting ready to tear that big building down because they built their new one. Let's find someone with some deep pockets that can utilize the building they're about to tear down. That building's built very well. Okay? Think about it. 4 floors, 5 floors, marble, stone. Come on. We got to find somebody with some pockets who can utilize that structure. Let's not just tear it down. Next thing is, let's see, talked about homelessness. The long issue you debated tonight about these undocumented people. Let's get them documented. Let's get these people taken care of so we don't have to worry about somebody coming along. These people know they're undocumented. They know they have children that are here that are illegal. 18-year-old girl, a 20-year-old girl gets arrested for DUI. She's been undocumented for 18 or 20 years. This should not be a surprise, okay? I don't know what it takes, what steps it takes, and all these things to do this. If we didn't undocumented people, we received the 92 grand. Kalamazoo Police Department's happy, everybody's happy, we're on down the road. These people got here somehow. They knew they were undocumented when they got here. Don't shake your head. Yes, they did. And I don't know where they came from, 1,500 miles away or wherever. There must have been a reason to get to Kalamazoo, Michigan. I don't know what that reason is. Let's get it taken care of.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Alice Wright, and I have a problem with Westnedge. Every time I call the police, they just pass by. Sometimes they come, sometimes they don't. I live on Westnedge where it's always been a problem. But after I moved there in 2005, for 3 years, I asked them not to come there, not to be in front of my house, not to play loud music. Okay, they did it. But now there's a younger generation. And I go to Galilee Church, so I'm right there at Deacon Comfort. So my church people are passing by seeing I'm sorry, all these hoodlums in front of my house or at Deacon Comfort or right down the street. At 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, they're playing their music. I call the police and they'll come and talk to them. No, you're supposed to write them a ticket because you're not supposed to be parked on the street after 2 o'clock. So that's why I wait till after 2, because you're waking me up. And sometimes it's just Friday and Saturday, and sometimes it's through the week. And I'll go out there and ask them, could you please turn your music down? I mean, they be way down the street. And sometimes they will, but like they said, Alice, they're getting new people down there. You don't know what they're going to do to you. Shoot your house up or something, or do your car. So I'm just asking. And when I called the police, they said, we have better, they didn't say better things to do. Sometimes we have to do something. Okay, I'm going to tell you, I'm a TV freak. I be watching that story, 911, where the man called him one night and said that he was drunk. Could the police go buy him a case of beer? I mean, people do dumb stuff. But I would know if I call the police and you coming, it might take a while. But if I call the police on the 1st of November and I don't see you December, January, it's a problem. And then y'all need to start ticketing these people for walking in the street. That's a $50 fine. Y'all can make money. I mean, it don't make any sense. Parking after 2 in the morning, walking in the middle of the street, and the cars don't have nowhere to go. I tried to pass the people walking in the street, and they throw rocks at me. And I mean, these are 17, 18, 19-year-old people. Skateboards, they won't move. So it's something need to be did. So, I mean, I need y'all help to let me know what to do, because it got to stop. Because, the north side is not really bad. It's just the kids. Like the ecstasy line. It's just the kids. So if y'all would help, if the police would help, it would be a beautiful neighborhood. It's not really bad, just one part of Westnedge. It was cleaned up, and now it went back to being messed up. So please, I'm going to call the police and go down there and have a meeting with them too. But it got to stop. It got to stop, because somebody's going to get hurt real bad, real bad. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Mark Shupan, 3224 Lake Hill, Kalamazoo. First, thanks for the good comments today. You just saw our future, those two guys that were up here, and they're young and ambitious. But I just want to tell you a couple of things. One, I stood here 42 years ago when I had a 7,500 square foot building on Lake Street with no heat, and asked for a 198 so I could move to Miller Road, where we still are and have expanded a number of times. But I just want you to know I appreciate very much the confidence people had then in allowing us a 198. And we've grown, obviously. But Kalamazoo is still our home. It's still where we're going to continue to try to make the community better. And I want to say one thing. We just had our United Way campaign, and we had 93.5% participation from 350 people. And these guys aren't all making 100 grand, I'll tell you that. They're doing it because they want to make this a better place. And the other thing is, if I ever think about running for any kind of an office, please talk me out of it. But anyway, thank you for all you do, and I appreciate the diverse. That's what makes us a great country. There's different ideas, and there'll be a sign, our electric sign on Business Line 94 tomorrow will say, "It's a privilege to vote. Please vote." So thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Michael Reiser. I'm homeless here in Kalamazoo. Because it's getting late at night, I kind of had to write this down so I didn't forget. As you plan your family gatherings this holiday season at homes all across the state and country, remember those in your communities that all they want for the holidays is a home to gather with their families. Also remember those who are without the means necessary to go home to spend time with family. We have entered the season where those less fortunate in our community contemplate suicide instead of facing the holidays because of the lack of a place to call home. Remember those still living in tents as the weather begins to get cold. All we want for the holidays is a home. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you. Good evening.
My name's Zach Laster. I live in the city of Kalamazoo. What Mike said is great. I'm not going to say who, but I sat in CMH today with someone that's suicidal and homeless right now, trying to get them the help they need. And there were other people there too. And being homeless is a huge contributor to not being mentally well. I was there myself when I was homeless. That's all I'm going to say about homelessness tonight, because there's some other things that we need to address. After the last city commission meeting, a group of young men were smoking a Black and Mild outside while shooting a music video. I know what weed smells like. Others that were there know what weed smells like, and no one smelled weed. However, Mayor Hopewell, who was not outside, did this.
Public safety tonight.
Hey, it's Carrie Ann. How are you?
Good. How are you, Chief?
Hey, listen, I just got a call from the mayor. Evidently, either on, I think it's the front steps of City Hall, it may be the back.
Okay.
That someone is like filming their own music video while they're smoking. Northbound Nazareth. If you can send an officer over there.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I had Kayla yelling at me through this tech channel. So you said the front or the back?
Yeah, it's probably the front steps. Evidently, they're smoking a little video while they're smoking weed. For their video, so.
Okay, we'll send somebody over there.
All right, thanks, I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. I'll see you.
I know what weed smells like. They weren't smoking weed. So Mayor Hopewell, how did you tell what a citizen's smoking when you weren't even out there? Even if they were smoking marijuana, which they weren't, citizens of Kalamazoo voted to make it the lowest priority for law enforcement. Not one, not two, not three, but 4 officers were dispatched to that call. You might also want to make sure your local Democrats aren't smoking weed, the ones you associate with, because their Instagram's just full of pictures of them smoking weed. It almost looks like a Cheech and Chong photo session on some of their Instagrams. So, what's the deal here? I mean, not cool.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Keith Hudson. I'm homeless here in the city. Agreeing with what Mike said and everyone else, but it's hard to be homeless during the holidays, and that's really all I have.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Maddie Jordan Woods, and I live at 902 West Patterson. And I really was going to go home very thankful to you all for voting for the Cultural Business District. But I think that one of the things that we keep forgetting is that as commissioners, your jobs is to do certain things, and that you guys was elected because there was people all over the city who believed in the things that you were doing. And whether we agree with you or not on where you're doing things, that there has to be a certain amount of respect that is said to you guys. And I hope that you all understand that there are a lot of people that believe that, and they understand that you all do not get the chance to respond back when you're attacked. So I commend you. Every time they ask me, Maddie, should you run, I'd be like, no, because my mouth would not be able to stand there and allow that to happen, and you all know that. So I just wanted to say that, and hope that you all continue to agree to be commissioners, whether we agree or not. And clearly, I've not agreed with a couple of you all, but I say it on the side, and I let you all know. So hope everybody go out and vote, and more important, I hope that that in this country that we figure out how to use economic development so that we don't have people saying that they are homeless, and that we figure out how do we truly help them, how do we get past the talk and to the business of providing the houses, whether it is taking some of the abandoned houses or whether it is using new construction, and see how we do it. We're working real hard on the north side, and it's kind of disheartening to hear that we've got one of our residents that said that the music is so loud and that the officers aren't coming. So we hope that something is done about that, because we are really trying to keep people to stay in the neighborhood, to understand that developers are coming in and buying up the neighborhood, and when they buy up a certain amount, we're not going to be able to live there. And so I don't want them to go sooner, because they feel like we cannot get protection when the music is too loud. I understand public safety is doing a lot, and we are really working with public safety. And so I just want to say that I hope that we all figure out how to make a change so that we aren't attacking each other, because I think that's what's going on in this country, that our disagreements are leading to us attacking each other, and then we're not getting anywhere. And those of us who know better, we know that we need to get some real solutions, because if another country decided to attack America right now, we probably couldn't even defend ourselves because we're too busy fighting each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please. Good evening.
Good evening. Manju Freeman, once again, I'm a student of Western Michigan University. First of all, I did want to applaud the collaboration I see between the commission and the city as well. What I did want to comment on is that there seems to be a lack of, what's the word I'm looking for? In fact, I used the word collaboration incorrectly. I wanted to say there seems to be a lack of collaboration. There's a lot of language going back and forth where I feel as though there's not enough of an understanding of the extent of power of everyone, as well as there's not as much of an understanding of the need, so to say, or the things that can be done, or the things that can be fixed all at once. I personally feel as though there needs to be more of a conversation about the things that can be done. It needs to be done more consistently on a community basis. Where one of the main issues that I have is the amount of students that I don't see here, or the amount of younger that I don't see here, mainly because like they're not as informed, or people are not as inspired to come to speak to these things, or the fact that we would have ongoing issues, because homelessness in Kalamazoo has been going on for decades. And it's it's a growing, I'll use the word epidemic in this country as well, and we're seeing those patterns not going anywhere progressively. However, I would want to make a suggestion that, especially because I'm staying in the city for an extended amount of time, this is more of a personal way of me reaching out to saying that I want to work more towards being more of a voice between the community and city politics, so that more of these concerns are being heard more readily, and that we have a reporting process, an identifying process of actions being taken, maybe things that are not always done directly through things like commission and whatnot. As I said, there's an extent of power there. I think you guys are in charge of there. I think that you are not, and I don't feel as though everyone is fully informed on what you can and cannot do. And that would also lead to, like people coming here and, like saying things that, or like addressing concerns that they don't necessarily know that this is not where they can actually be fixed. So I feel as though there needs to be more of an education piece on that, as well as more of an effort to actually making sure that we can solve some of those problems that citizens have independently and individually. Otherwise, it's going to continue to keep on eating that time. It's going to be a continuous issue where we're going to keep on hearing the same things at every meeting.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to address the commission this evening? Seeing no one, we are at commissioners' comments. Commissioner Sykes.
Thank you, Mayor. It's been a long night, long day. I'm tired. Long month, long year. But I'm gonna try and remember and touch on a small handful of things that I want to say to end the night. First, I want to thank those who showed up in support of our homeless community, especially those with fresh ideas and a real desire to do some good. One thing that I thought about as I was hearing a couple of those ideas is that we have Gwendolyn Hooker in the room and her organization. Now I'm going to try to remember. Hope. It's HOPE. And that's an acronym, and it stands for something that I had pulled up a minute ago. Oh, wait. Oh, I lost it. Okay. Anyway, get with Gwen. Talk to Gwen. I know that HOPE has had success in developing a program to build some tiny homes for people in need, and I'm sure would welcome more help, more resources to build more. I do want to just note in Commissioner Cunningham's absence that, because I know this is something that he would say, is the hope would also be that we don't consolidate poverty in one area. And I know that that's something that both, that Gwendolyn Hooker is also, also has on her mind as somebody who works really hard for her community. So I would suggest that up until, the city is in a position to offer more, that folks who really want to help touch bases. Gwen, do you mind raising your hand for me? Okay. Talk to that person right there and get connected. Sorry, I took notes on my phone for everything I wanted to touch on. I do feel it's very important. I so appreciate people who work really hard to help other communities. I also just want to note, this is just a personal philosophy of mine that I've learned through over a decade of organizing and activism, and that is that we have to allow those most impacted to lead the work in developing systems and support for folks, because, on the outside looking in, it's just not humanly possible for us to really understand all the barriers, all the concerns, which is another reason why I would advocate for folks talking to Gwen, mainly because she's a great representative for her community and also has experience with some of the issues and barriers that folks are facing right now in acquiring housing. I wanted to respond to the gentleman's comments about getting undocumented folks documented. I think, and Susan Reed is an attorney in our area you can look up. She works for the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, and she can speak more thoroughly to this than I can, but I can share that it's not that easy for an undocumented individual to get documented. That process has taken over 15 years for some people, and in the meantime, you're not protected. There are other individuals who came here as small children who are required to go home for a certain number of years. Well, home, if you came over when you were 2 with your parents and now you're an adult, it's very common to be required to go back to the home country you never knew for a number of years before the system resets itself and you can come apply for citizenship. You cannot be in this country living undocumented, even if you came over as a small children, and apply for citizenship now, except for in the case of DACA, which this current administration is also looking to overturn. So that's something to keep in mind. Additionally, you know, we are seeing at the border what happens when people come here for asylum. So it is a constitutional right, it is a treaty, it is internationally, people who are in dangerous situations in their countries are afforded the right to seek asylum in other countries. Our administration is breaking the law by instead taking those people at the border, separating them from their children, and incarcerating them essentially, and putting their children in essential incarceration in the in what are modern-day concentration camps. They are violating their laws to seek asylum. So we do have people, many people in this country who are hiding because they came here to seek asylum and are not being offered that opportunity, and know that if they go home, they will lose their lives. There have been lots of reports of a huge number of people who have been deported only to be killed within a short amount of time of having to return home to their country. So as much as I wish everybody who's here undocumented could just go get documented, trust me, if that were an option, that would be what's happening. But it doesn't, the system does not work that way. And that's factual. I want to also note the concerns for our young people, especially those who are engaged in activities that are not desirable, for lack of a better word. I just feel really compelled to say, yes, we have to respond to these concerns. Yes, my hope is that when the call is made, it is answered. I do know what it's like to have music blaring in the middle of the night and not be able to sleep, because I live in a college neighborhood and they're prone to that activity as well. I also want to note that a lot of our young people are dealing with a great deal of trauma. I used to talk about that on a really theoretical level. However, my nephew is living with me right now, 20 years old, here from Detroit with heart issues, and so we're working really hard to get him treatment before he goes back home to Detroit. But to hear some of the stories of things that have been going on in his life, in his neighborhood, in his home, that I have not been aware of, and then to also know, some of the activity that happens, with him and his friends in their neighborhoods, the level of trauma is staggering. And I want us to make sure that we are responding to needs and we are correcting behavior and we are working at healing the trauma that our young people have experienced, and the PTSD that goes along with it. So I wanted to say that. I will also just share today, a few people from the Bronson Park Freedom Encampment had court, so many of us were there at the courthouse to support them. And then there was a meeting at Ministry with Community after that. Folks have been scattered for a really long time, and it's been really hard to organize and get folks together and get them the support and help that they need. However, today was a turning point, I think, for us, in that we were able to reconnect a lot of people who some of us hadn't since Bronson Park. I also want to note that one of the things that was lifted up and I won't disclose names or information, that's up to them to do, but an individual lifted up the need for healing for this community, because this was a living, breathing community with a support system, systems of restorative justice, systems where people were cared for, and people knew at the end of the night where they were going to sleep at, and the trauma that folks experienced by having that community, number one, snatched away very suddenly, the trauma of watching personal belongings be bulldozed, especially people who did in that moment try to cross the police line to get their belongings and were not allowed to, and then witnessed their stuff being bulldozed. And you know, the huge number of people who left because they were instructed to. Everybody is feeling a great amount of trauma and pain from having lost that family and that community. We saw a lot of tears today, and people needed a lot of emotional support. So I want to lift that up as something that we also continue to keep in mind, in addition to the fact that we need to deal with the lack of affordable housing and find solutions and better support solutions from people like, you know, Gwen doing important work in the community. But people are also dealing with a huge amount of trauma and pain, and that's a lot. So I'm gonna shut up because I don't feel like I'm always fair to my colleagues because I talk way too much. But please keep that in mind as you go through your days thinking about next steps on a lot of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson, Commissioner Cooney?
Two things. That's good advice to check with Gwendolyn Hooker back there, because she is the empress of small housing in the city. So you need to talk to her. And thank you for standing up and doing that, young man and his father there. I think that's great that you're doing that. My one message is, please vote tomorrow. It is so important for what happens in our community and in our country.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Irvin?
Thank you, Mayor Hopewell. I have an issue that was brought to my attention last week. In this case, it's a constituent who is advocating for people who are not able to advocate for themselves very well. These are folk who are at the state hospital next door to the Health and Human Services building on Wester's campus, where there is a big parking lot that is used for tailgating at football games. And it was brought to my attention that the clients of the state hospital are typically exercised, allowed to walk the grounds in the evenings. It's a good time for them to do that. But because of the activities going on in that, at these tailgating parties, the state hospital has told their employees and their clients that they must stay indoors during these events. I have informed Western of that, and they gave me a reply that was, in my opinion, insufficient. I just want to let everybody know that it's not just neighbors of Western who are capable of moving away from noise. There are people who are suffering, who can't speak for themselves and can't move away. And this is all for the sake of a football game and drinking at a tailgating party. So there's a disconnect here that I just want to bring to people's attention. It doesn't compare with some of the more serious things that we're dealing with in our community that we've been dealing with all this evening. But everybody has an issue that they want to bring forward, and they have a right to have it be talked about at city commission meetings. So I've done my part with this, and I hope that the Western and the state hospital can work out an accommodation that is satisfactory to everybody and doesn't infringe on anybody's freedom of movement or accessibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. For the gentleman and his children, I know our Director of Community Planning and Economic Development heard what you had to say, and she was nodding her head. She'd love to talk to you, so I think you're going to get a visit before you leave here tonight. Also, the young lady who talked about the issues that she's having with folks standing outside her home, again, I think our chief heard you, and you may get a visit from her any minute to talk to you about your issue. Tomorrow is Election Day, and it's hopefully going to be a day that is a little bit different than the one that happened in 2016, a lot different. So it can only be that way if you get out and if you take somebody with you. Call your friends, talk to everybody you know, get out and vote. It's vital, so please do that. Commissioners, we have a request for a closed session. Is there a motion to go into close? Moved by Commissioner Anderson.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Cooney.
Are we going to come back?
We are not coming back for action, so the meeting will be adjourned after this vote. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes, we are adjourned.
Yeah, hopefully.
So bad, not getting married for about 45 minutes.